Chapter 56. When Sandame Naruto heard that Naruto agreed to give up on 4th Naruto's technique, he was very satisfied, and his face couldn't help but reveal a more kind smile. However, when he heard the second sentence, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. He laughed and said, "How can ice release be so easy to learn? Don't bite off more than you can chew." Naruto nodded obediently. Okay. Then he continued to ask, "Then if I work hard to learn it, will there be other ice release techniques?" Obviously, Naruto didn't want to let Sandame Naruto succeed, so he took the opportunity to change the topic. Sandame Naruto had no choice but to frown and think, "If you really succeed, then come to me to get another scroll." And so, the meeting with Sandame Naruto ended happily. After leaving Naruto's office, Naruto went straight home. He couldn't wait to know what kind of ninjutsu was recorded in this scroll. As soon as he entered the house, Nine-Tails suddenly said, "Find a sealing scroll and seal the kunai that Sandame Naruto gave you." Naruto was puzzled. Is there a problem with that kunai? "Kyuubi, I have seen Yondame Hokage's kunai, and the feeling it gives me is very different." Naruto nodded and chose to listen to Nine-Tails. He first poured out an empty storage scroll and put the 3-pronged kunai inside. As for the sealing scroll, he would wait until the next time he went to the store manager's place to get one. Throwing the scroll with the 3-pronged kunai aside, Naruto excitedly opened the scroll that he got from Sandame Naruto. Right, there was one more thing to do. Naruto used the Shadow Clone Jutsu to create 5 clones. Then he gave the 5 clones a plant illustration book that was as thick as 2 palms. He ordered all the clones to read it once. Naruto's idea was that since he was going to learn medical ninjutsu, the knowledge of plants should be basic knowledge, so he should first memorize it in his mind. Otherwise, the next time he sees Hanamoon-sensei, she will test him again, and it will be difficult if he can't answer. But in fact, even Kazuma Hana can't memorize a herb dictionary. However, if Kazuma Hana knew that Naruto had such a feat, she would be very happy. What could be more pleasing to a medical ninja than a human-shaped intelligent herb dictionary? The 5 clones took the Kusanagi dictionary and memorized it. Naruto finally opened the Ice Release Secret Technique scroll. As soon as he opened it, Naruto liked. The first part of the scrolls is this cultivation experience. And it's that it can produce snows. Although snow is not as hard as ice, it is more flexible than ice. When you can transform snow and ice at will, you can use all kinds of ninjutsu that don't require any hand seals. Ice, on the other hand, was produced when wind and water were equal. In other words, if feng shui is equal, ice is formed. Weaken water, ice turns into snow. Weaken wind, ice turns into water. The front part describes the basic changes of ice release, and the back part is the control method. There are a total of 3 levels. Ice Release Control Practice Beginner. Controlling one attribute with one hand, left hand as wind and right hand as water, or right hand as wind and left hand as water. Ice Release Control Practice Advanced. Controlling 2 attributes with one hand at the same time. Ice Release Control Practice Advanced. Don't move, melt ice with your mind, don't see snow, see here where ice and snow are, you will be there. Naruto's eyes widened. This advanced control technique is too awesome, right? So he directly opened the scroll to see if there were any advanced cultivation methods. But to Naruto's disappointment, he didn't see the end. This scroll only talked about the advanced part, controlling 2 attributes with one hand. Naruto couldn't help but guess, is the scroll in Sandame Naruto's hand a high-level one? Sensei, if that's the case, how did Konoha get their hands on such a powerful scroll? Is the decline of ice release related to Wood Leaf? Is it Wood Leaf that destroyed the ice release Kekii Genkai? Naruto shook his head and threw out the unfounded guess. Naruto glanced at the name of the secret technique, 1,000 Miles of Ice. It was a secret technique that changed the temperature. According to the secret technique, if the caster was strong enough, he could even change the weather. Naruto blinked. It seems to be a great secret technique. Then Naruto returned to the beginning, planning to go back and cultivate from the basic part. Naruto could already reach the introductory part by himself. He could control the formation of ice and snow with 2 hands. Naruto carefully looked at the standard cultivation method. He found that there was also an introduction to using chakra to freeze the body to stimulate the body. After looking at the standard method of freezing ice and snow, Naruto raised his hand and tried again. His left hand had the water attribute, and his right hand had the wind attribute. There were no special requirements for forming seals, only the change of fist and palm. Chakra's main hand should be on top. Naruto's left hand formed a fist, and his right hand formed a palm to cover it. Wind main, water auxiliary, snow. Chakra came out of his body, and white snowflakes revolved around Naruto's body in a clockwise direction. Success! Naruto's left hand didn't move, and his right palm moved from top to bottom. Water main, wind auxiliary, water. The snowflakes around his body melted into small water droplets. Naruto controlled these water droplets with chakra, making the water droplets connect together and form a water ring around his body. Success! Then next. His hands turned into fists at the same time, and the fists collided with each other. Water and wind were equal, ice. The water ring turned into an ice ring. But at the same time, Naruto also found that it was more difficult to change the shape of the ice ring. So Naruto's right fist turned into a palm and pressed on his left fist. Wind main, water auxiliary, snow. Clack, 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 clack. The control failed. The ice ring broke into pieces. Naruto condensed the ice ring again. Then his left hand formed a fist, and his right hand formed a palm. Water main, wind auxiliary, water. Success this time. It seemed that it was very difficult to control from ice to snow, but from ice to water was very easy. Naruto also understood why water was an important part of the transformation of ice and snow. Naruto's right palm covered his left fist. Wind main, water auxiliary, snow. The water ring around his body turned into snow in an instant. From condensing together, it turned into drifting snowflakes. The records on the scroll, fist and palm, didn't mean to be fixed. It depended on the user's own definition. In this way, in the process of using it, one could gradually get used to the system, form a conditioned reflex, and control ice and snow at the fastest speed. Naruto's definition was left fist and right palm, left hand as water, right hand as wind. Because it was very easy to remember, left hand as Azure Dragon, right hand as White Tiger. Cloud follows dragon, wind follows tiger. Cloud is water. Naruto had fun and did it again. Right palm pressed left fist, wind main, water main, snow. Naruto controlled the snow to surround his body clockwise. The reason why it was clockwise was the same principle as practicing Rasengan. Because Naruto's chakra was formed clockwise. Then he kept right palm pressed left fist and pushed out. Shoot! Snowflakes shot out. Right palm down, left fist, water main, wind auxiliary, water. Naruto, return. The snowflakes that shot out melted into water and condensed together, forming a water dragon that circled around. What posture should he use for ice? Holding 2 fists together was a bit like radio gymnastics. Then change it to 2 palms, like Inoki's posture when he used dust release, with the tiger's mouth facing each other. His hands weren't completely straight, leaving a natural curve. Feng Shui balanced, ice. Naruto, ice arrow shoot. The water dragon that circled around instantly turned into an ice arrow and shot out. The ice arrow that was as thick as an arm was more appropriate to call it an icicle than an ice arrow. Boom! With a sound, the ice arrow pierced through the wall. A hole suddenly appeared in the wall. Naruto blinked. It's over, it's out of control again. Naruto sighed and was about to get up and think of a way to fill the hole. At this time, a clone that had finished reading the plant dictionary dispelled the clone. For a moment, an extremely large amount of information appeared in his mind. Naruto only felt dizzy. He moved something under his feet, and then his left foot tripped his right foot and he fell to the ground. Naruto, F*CK, the clone is also a trap. Chapter 57. Naruto found some tape and barely sealed the broken wall to block the air vent. Then, he continued to practice the advanced chapter of Ice Escape. Naruto skimmed through the beginner chapter of Ice Escape with both hands. However, things didn't go so smoothly when he reached the advanced chapter. The advanced chapter required him to control 2 types of chakra with one hand. He needed to imbue 2 types of chakra into 2 meridians in one arm. The introduction seemed simple, but when he really tried it, Naruto found that it was more than a little difficult. It was like asking a normal person to write with his feet. After failing dozens of times, an hour passed in a hurry. Naruto's enthusiasm continued to decrease. Well, controlling with one hand and 2 hands shouldn't affect the cultivation of the secret technique, right? Why don't I take a look at the secret technique first? However, when Naruto looked down, he saw a warning. If your control technique hasn't reached the advanced chapter, please don't try to cultivate the secret technique. Naruto's mouth twitched. After hesitating for a while, he went back to read the main points of Ice Escape with one hand. The scroll pointed out that one could launch 2 different attacks with one hand or control the attack with one hand and the defense with the other. This was an extremely important part of the cultivation of Ice Escape. It was related to the chances of survival on the battlefield. Naruto muttered to himself, "It's related to life. It's really important." So, Naruto started cultivating again. The second clone finished reading the plant dictionary. A huge amount of information came again. Naruto's hand, which had just started to float a snowflake, was interrupted. Naruto felt very sleepy. He glanced at the time. It was already midnight. Let's cultivate for a while more. Naruto struggled to float a snowflake with one hand. Did this count as completing the first step of cultivation? No, this was just the beginning. To complete the single-handed cultivation, one had to be able to use one hand to change the 3 types of ice, snow, and water. Only after doing this could one be considered to have reached the next level. However, this wasn't all. The real master was to use both hands to launch different attacks, defenses, ice, and snow. When Naruto was able to use one hand to control the snowflakes around his arm to make the 3 changes of ice, snow, and water. The third clone finished reading the plant dictionary. Naruto finally couldn't hold on any longer. With a plopped sound, he fell asleep on the sofa. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning. That night, Naruto had a very magical dream. He dreamt that he had turned into a plant and was living in a herbal garden filled with all kinds of plants. Then, he pulled out his roots from the soil and walked out. While admiring the other plants, he muttered the names, properties, and pharmacology of the plants. The next day, the alarm clock rang. Naruto curled up on the sofa in a daze. He raised his hand, condensed an icicle in his palm, and then shot it out. It pierced through the wall and hit the alarm clock in the bedroom. Then, the world fell silent. Naruto continued sleeping. An hour later, Kakashi, Sasuke, and Hinata climbed into Naruto's kitchen through the open window. Kaka looked at the newly bought kitchen utensils in surprise. Huh? I didn't see these things the first time I came here. Did Naruto start learning to cook recently? Sasuke also glanced at the utensils. In fact, Sasuke, who lived alone, also knew how to cook some food. Kaka asked, "Have you been to Naruto's house before?" Kakashi looked at the utensils and replied, "Yes, when the third Naruto informed you that you were my students, I came here for a home visit." Unlike Sasuke, who could barely cook some food, Kakashi was very good at cooking, especially fish. He had caught all the fish in the Woodleaf River, so he had cooked them all. He was very good at it. Therefore, he couldn't help but take a few more glances at the utensils. He commented, "It's not just a decoration. Although this pot is very new and cleaned, it has been cooked before." Hinata, who was the last to come in, looked over. This was the first time that Hinata had come to Naruto's house. She couldn't help but feel a little happy and nervous. Naruto-kun could cook, and Hinata already knew about it when the two of them bought kitchenware together. It was just that she hadn't tasted Naruto-kun's cooking. It was getting late after they bought the utensils that day, and then they parted. Well, Naruto-kun also gave her a gift that day. Hinata blushed when she thought of the gift. At first, it was a set of underwear. When Hinata saw it, she was so shy that she wanted to crawl into a hole in the ground. Later, she went to the bathroom. When she came out, she found that the gift box had been changed. The gift box, which had already been opened, was sealed once again. Hinata opened it and saw that there was a soft armor inside. She understood that the gift was most likely taken by the unscrupulous uncle. However, Hinata was distressed because she had already taken out the underwear from the box. After sneaking into her house and changing the gift, he only took away an empty box. Because the item was a girl's underwear, Hinata didn't know how to return it. Did the uncle have a special hobby? If she returned it, would he be angry? Therefore, the set of underwear was still intact in her house. She tried to put the underwear back into the gift box and went to the bathroom a few times, but the person who sneaked into her house didn't appear again. The three of them touched this and looked at that in the kitchen. Soon, they left the kitchen. When they entered the living room, the three of them were dumbfounded. The cold wind blew in the room, and the thick dictionary on the floor flipped a few pages from time to time. Kakashi looked at the air vent. There was a hole as thick as 2 arms, and there were traces of rough tape on it. Now, the pieces of tape were fluttering in the wind. There was more than one hole in the room. Kakashi saw that there was another hole in the wall connected to the bedroom. It was the same as the previous hole. It was obvious that it was caused by the same method. Kakashi glanced at the book on the floor. It was a plant dictionary. He had seen this in the hands of other medical ninjas. Picking up the book from the floor, Kakashi walked to the sofa and saw the sleeping Naruto and the scroll on the coffee table. Naruto fell asleep while cultivating yesterday. Kakashi had a preliminary guess. Then, he looked at the wall behind the sofa that was connected to the bedroom. Kakashi wasn't in a hurry to wake Naruto up. He walked into the bedroom and saw the broken parts of the alarm clock. Kakashi's mouth twitched. This guy. However, he still had to wake him up. Kakashi returned to the sofa and said, "Naruto, it's already past the assembly time. How long do you plan to sleep?" Naruto raised his hand. Kakashi was stunned, thinking that Naruto had woken up. But in the next moment, an icicle instantly condensed and shot toward his face. Kakashi tilted his head and dodged. Then, the icicle shot into the wall behind Kakashi. Boom! Once again, the wall was pierced through, creating a huge hole. Kakashi's face darkened. He raised his hand. Zap zap zap. Electric arcs flowed and then shot toward Naruto. Electric shock. Kakashi roared, "Get up!" Naruto finally woke up from the convulsions of the electric shock. His blonde hair, which was originally very straight, was also electrified. "Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto opened his mouth, and a cloud of black smoke floated out of his mouth. Kakashi stared at Naruto with dead fish eyes. "You're late, Naruto." Chapter 58. Naruto spent the whole morning in resentment. "I'm just late. Is it necessary?" Being awakened by an electric shock is really a terrible experience. It's worth mentioning that because Naruto was late, and Kakashi was curious, Naruto was punished to make breakfast for the three of them. So Naruto toasted a slice of bread, sandwiched lettuce, fried the meat, and smeared it with butter. Just like that, the emasculated version of hamburgers from another world was served on the table, accompanied by medium well-fried egg soup, and a cup of freshly squeezed soy milk with sugar. It's also a unique breakfast. During this meal, Kakashi actually took off his mask in a relaxed manner. Well, Kakashi's face is very handsome, but there is a long scar under his left eye, extending to the corner of his mouth and across half of his face. After the meal, Kakashi said that it was delicious and looked forward to Naruto being late again tomorrow. In this regard, Naruto's resentment deepened. However, because he can eat breakfast with Hinata, Naruto reluctantly accepted. As for the other 2 light bulbs at the breakfast table, they are just 2 big-eyed chihuahuas to liven things up. The morning was spent in cultivation. The three of them cultivated separately. In Kakashi's words, this is to give them time to prepare for Chunin's exam. In fact, in Naruto's view, Kakashi is deliberately lazy to take the opportunity to study Kekkei Genkai. Will Kakashi succeed? Seeing that he was awakened in the morning and was forced to do hard work, Naruto cursed him to never be able to study it. However, thinking that Terumi Mei can study 2 Kekkei Genkai, Kakashi's talent is better than her? Then I curse him to be blown up several times in the process of research. Naruto was thinking maliciously, but the jinx came true, and a loud bang followed. In the familiar explosion sound, the three of them habitually lay down to avoid being hit by the explosion. But they can't always do this. So under Naruto's suggestion, the three of them each dug a big hole. No matter what kind of artillery fire is flying above, they are not afraid of being affected by the big hole. At noon, everyone separated. Naruto invited Hinata to eat at home. The reason is that the two of them can go directly to the medical ninja class in the afternoon. Hinata shyly agreed. But when they started eating, they found that there are 2 more chairs and 2 people at the table. Sasuke coolly looked at Naruto. I was brought here by Kakashi, sensei. Naruto looked at Kakashi. Kakashi smiled and narrowed his eyes. I suddenly don't know what to eat, so I came to join in the fun. Naruto rolled up his sleeves and went back to the kitchen to add another dish. Originally, chicken stewed with mushroom and cola chicken wings, chicken and then added braised fish. Then each had a bowl of white lunch passed in a somewhat unpleasant way. After eating, Naruto said with resentment, "You guys won't go to the medical ninja class with me, right?" Kakashi put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth with a tissue, and pulled up his wound mask. "Thank you for your hospitality. You and Hinata won't be here in the afternoon, so I just happen to be taking Sasuke for special training. I won't be joining in the fun." Naruto finally breathed a sigh of relief. If their team suddenly trained 3 medical ninjas, then I don't know if the Sandaime will directly change them into a medical ninja team. In the afternoon's medical ninja class, each of them had a freshly dead fish. Their mission was to use the Yang attribute chakra to save the fish. They used an auxiliary scroll that could help chakra transform into the Yang attribute. Hanatsuki stood in front of them and instructed, "The first time transforming chakra into the Yang attribute, you need to be patient. Don't be impatient. Chakra has to be controlled with extreme precision. You need to wrap all the cells in the fish's body. At the same time, you need to sense the changes the scroll makes to chakra. Try to remember and learn the transformation process. Only by carefully experiencing it can you succeed faster." Saying that, she demonstrated the process. A dead fish that had been frozen quickly came back to life under the chakra treatment of Hana Fujita. Swinging its tail, it didn't look like a dead fish at all. Hanatsuki happily threw the fish into a large bucket prepared in advance. This is the initial effect of the healing technique. Although this is just a normal fish and doesn't have chakra in its body, the healing technique can still stimulate its life. What you need to do is to learn the process. This process may last a day or 3 days and you won't be able to figure it out, so don't be impatient. Okay, let's begin. Sakura Haruno listened to Hanatsuki's explanation very seriously. In her opinion, as long as she could complete Hanatsuki's mission before Naruto, she would be able to surpass Naruto. In that case, what Naruto did yesterday was nothing. She went home yesterday and reviewed her notes seriously. She had already caught up to him. Sakura Haruno took a deep breath and cheered herself on in her heart. "Sakura Haruno, you have to do it." She raised her hand and was about to focus on chakra when suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the other side. It was Ino's exclamation. Haruno Sakura subconsciously turned her head to look, and she was stunned on the spot. Naruto had actually revived the fish. In fact, when the fish came back to life and jumped up while flapping its tail, Naruto was also shocked. He was even shocked by the fish that suddenly came back to life. Hanatsuki quickly rushed over. "Did you do this?" This was nonsense, but it also showed Hanatsuki's shock. Ino Yamanaka stared at the jumping fish and was full of suspicion. Was this fish pretending to be dead? This sentence attracted everyone's attention. Hanatsuki also hesitated, because this was also a possibility. Was the fish pretending to be dead? A glimmer of hope appeared in Sakura Haruno's eyes. If the fish was pretending to be dead, then she still had hope of surpassing Naruto. Hanatsuki gave Naruto a fresh dead fish. Come, try again. Under everyone's gazes, Naruto took a deep breath. In fact, he was also muttering in his heart. The wind element chakra's attribute change, the water element chakra's attribute change, and the ice element chakra's attribute change all made him suffer. Why was the yang element's attribute change so successful this time? Maybe that fish was pretending to be dead. Naruto condensed chakra in his palms and activated the support scroll. The support scroll activated Naruto's yang attribute change in chakra. This time, Naruto felt the change in chakra. It was an indescribable feeling. It was as warm as the sun and as refreshing as the wind. It made him feel refreshed, and the exhaustion from last night was swept away. Was this the yang attribute chakra's attribute change? So comfortable. At the same time, the fish suddenly opened its mouth and swung its tail. It was alive. Success. Naruto's success shocked everyone. Sakura Haruno's half-open mouth was like a drowning fish. She opened her mouth a few times, but no sound came out. At this moment, Naruto gave her a feeling that she could not surpass him. Hanatsuki's beautiful eyes were filled with a kind of greed. Her eyes no longer looked at Naruto as if she was looking at a human. It was the expression of a greedy female dragon looking at a shiny treasure. She smiled like a flower. Naruto, remove the support scroll and try again. As she said that, she gave Naruto a fresh dead fish. This time, Naruto did not succeed. Without the support scroll, Naruto didn't know how to control chakra and make the yang attribute change. Hanatsuki patiently instructed from the side, "Don't worry, use chakra to wrap the fish. Feel the life force in the fish that hasn't dissipated and then activate it." Naruto tried a few times but to no avail. He then said to Hanatsuki, "Sensei Hwayu, can you give me a few more fish? I want to change my cultivation method." Although Hanatsuki didn't know what method Naruto wanted to use, she still cooperated and took out 3 buckets of dead fish from her storage scroll. "I've prepared a lot of dead fish for you. You can have as many as you want." Naruto's eyes lit up. Multiple shadow clone technique. Bang, bang, bang. 50 Naruto suddenly appeared. The originally spacious room was suddenly filled with Naruto's clones. Fortunately, the room was large enough that it wasn't too crowded. There was still a distance of 2 meters between each person. Then the 50 Naruto's clones lined up, each took a fish, and started to practice. Hanatsuki was shocked and exclaimed, "These 50 clones aren't after images." Naruto nodded and replied, "Yes, they're all physical clones." At this moment, Hanatsuki suddenly saw the future of medical ninjas. There was a future after Naruto. Hanatsuki asked with a trembling voice, "How long can these clones last?" Naruto counted with his fingers. "One day shouldn't be a problem." Naruto thought to himself, "After all, it's only 50 clones." Hanatsuki's eyes widened. Happiness came too suddenly. Hanatsuki was so excited that she almost couldn't breathe. 50 clones that could last for a day. If this strength joined the medical ninja team, getting off work on time every day wouldn't be a dream. Because she was too excited, Hanatsuki directly hugged Naruto, like a cat lover who saw her favorite cat in her heart, and loved it very much. This not only stimulated Naruto, it also stimulated Hinata. Naruto hadn't even hugged his girlfriend before. First, he was kissed by Princess Little Snow. Now, he was being hugged by her teacher. Hinata suddenly felt a great sense of danger. The danger of losing Naruto. As for Naruto, it was naturally good to have a beauty hug him, but what was the meaning of lifting her up into the air with her feet off the ground? "I'm not a baby." Being lifted up high like this. So embarrassing. What was even more embarrassing was that there were 4 girls watching from the side, and Hinata was among them. Chapter 59. On that day, the only person who succeeded was Naruto, who didn't use a support scroll. The only person who barely succeeded after using a support scroll was Sakura Haruno. If it wasn't for Naruto, this would be a result that everyone would be envious of. As school was about to end, Hana Fujita casually chatted with Naruto. "Did you look at the plant dictionary I gave you yesterday? There are a lot of interesting plants in it." In order to cultivate Naruto's interest in medicine, Hana Fujita decided to supervise him diligently. She couldn't let Naruto waste his talent. Naruto nodded and replied, "I read it all." In Hana Fujita's understanding, this sentence was like a child receiving a picture album and flipping through it from beginning to end. She nodded and thought about how she had the same experience when she received a plant dictionary for the first time. Her smile became even friendlier. Sakura Haruno had been carefully listening to the conversation between the two. Plant dictionary? What was that? However, since Naruto had read it all, she couldn't fall behind. Thus, Sakura Haruno decided to go to the bookstore on the way home today and buy a book to take a look. After school, Hinata stood at the classroom door waiting to go home with Naruto. Even if the same road was only the same street, she wanted to walk with Naruto for a while. However, Hana Fujita waved her hand at her. "Little girl, you go home first. I've decided to teach Naruto some more things." Little girl? Little girl. Because Hana Fujita didn't know anyone else's name apart from Naruto. Naruto saw that Hinata was waiting for him and said, "How about tomorrow? Hana-sensei has worked hard today." Hana Fujita waved her hand repeatedly. "It's not hard, not hard. You're very talented. I'll teach you the deeper principles of chakra scalpel first. Go home and think about it carefully. Maybe you can learn it tomorrow. Why don't you let that little girl stay and listen too?" Seeing that Naruto seemed to care about the little girl at the door, Hana Yu's heart moved, and she used her trump card. As expected, Naruto stayed behind obediently. Hinata sat beside Naruto. 10 minutes later, the class ended. At this moment, under the setting sun, the sky was filled with burning clouds, outlining a myriad of poses that would cause one's imagination to run wild. The two of them strolled side by side against the burning clouds. The orange-gold light shone on their faces, casting long shadows on the green muddy path around them. The wind blew, and the shadows of the trees fell. It was very comfortable and comfortable. "Hey, Naruto-kun, did you understand what Hwayu-sensei just said?" Hinata didn't know what to say, so she casually found a topic to talk about. Although it was a terrible topic, it was already an excellent improvement for someone like her who didn't know how to take the initiative to talk. Naruto nodded with a thoughtful expression. "I did understand, but Fuji-sensei didn't tell me how to do it, so I still haven't figured out how to do it." Does Hinata have any ideas?" Hinata shook her head and said honestly, "I didn't even understand, but I'll try my best." Seeing Hinata's serious expression, Naruto paused for a moment, then grinned and said, "Okay. If there's anything you don't know, feel free to ask me." They walked to the end of the street. One left, one right, one south, one north, and it was time to say goodbye. The red glow of the burning clouds shone on Hinata's face, making her look even cuter. Hinata's serious expression was especially apparent when she said goodbye. "Naruto-kun, see you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." Looking at Hinata's departing figure, Naruto suddenly thought, "Tomorrow, should I be a little late? But, if I'm late, Kakashi-sensei might still come over to freeload." After returning home, Naruto looked at the repaired wall and suddenly froze, because he didn't find anyone to repair it. In his original plan, if one day this house collapsed, he would spend money to buy a new one, or even rent one. Naruto had long yearned for a villa with a front and backyard and several floors. Living in a place like the one he was currently living in was like living in an urn. Naruto felt that it would kill his passion for life. In his previous life, he had already spent most of his life in an urn. Was he going to have to spend the rest of his life in such a place? Naruto found a note on the coffee table. He opened it and read, "I've already found someone to repair the wall. Consider it a return gift for breakfast and lunch." At the same time, A brand new alarm clock is included. I hope you won't be late tomorrow. Your incomparably handsome teacher, Kakashi Hatake. Naruto's vision darkened. He complained, "Incomparably handsome? I admit that you are very handsome, but no matter how handsome you are, you can't be more handsome than me." Then, a smile unconsciously appeared on his face. "Well, then I'll stay in this house for a while." He casually placed Kakashi's note into the plant dictionary book. He stretched his body and cooked a bowl of noodles. Taking advantage of the leftovers from lunch, he took a simple bite and then continued to cultivate. Ice Element Advanced Control Cultivation, controlling the ice element with one hand. Unknowingly, it was already the wee hours of the morning. Naruto glanced at the time. His rationality told him that it was time to sleep, otherwise he would definitely be late tomorrow. "Let's practice 10 more times. I feel that I'm not far from mastering it." At 3 o'clock in the morning, Naruto raised both his hands. His left hand controlled an icicle, while his right hand twined snowflakes. This should be considered a success, right? Next, Naruto fell head first. This time, he wasn't lucky enough to fall on the sofa. Instead, he fell directly onto the floor and fell asleep. The next day, Kakashi brought Sasuke and Hinata to visit Naruto once again. Outside the house, Kakashi stared blankly at the hole in the wall. He recalled that he had already found someone to repair it. Furthermore, to be on the safe side, he even had his doppelganger take a look to confirm that his cultivation was not bad. But, who could tell him what was going on with this hole? The position of this hole was a little different from what he remembered. Kakashi turned his head to the side and saw that there were obvious traces of repairs. The answer was clear. This hole was newly made. The corners of Kakashi's mouth twitched. Today, Naruto's house was locked. However, this was not a problem for the former elite ninja of the Umbu. Chakra's water attribute changed and seeped into the door lock through the keyhole. Pada! The door opened. Naruto's house was only so big. With just a glance, they found Naruto on the sofa. It was probably because the floor was too hard and he had to climb up at night. Kakashi looked at the other parts of the house. Another hole appeared on the wall next to the bedroom. Kakashi did not need to look to know that the alarm clock he gave was most likely sacrificed. Unable to vent his anger, he shouted, "Naruto!" Naruto raised his hand in a daze. 3 icicles appeared in front of his hand and shot towards Kakashi. Kakashi's hand burst with lightning and formed a net. He raised his hand to defend and the 3 icicles disintegrated in mid-air. After that, Kakashi smirked and struck Naruto's body with lightning. ZZZ! Naruto's wails rang out. Chapter 60. A month quickly passed. During this month, Naruto lived every day to the fullest. During the day, he trained in the morning. In the afternoon, he attended Hua Yu's medical class. At night, he practiced ice until he fell asleep. Then, the next day, he would be woken up by Kakashi's electric shock. As punishment, he would make breakfast, and sometimes lunch. As for why he knew how to cook and when he learned it, Kakashi would sometimes ask. At this time, Naruto directly threw the blame to his father, whom he had never met before. He said that it was the inheritance of his memory. Then, he looked at the recipe and started to think about it when he was bored. Anyway, dead men tell no tales. You can't throw me into the interrogation room just because I know how to cook a few dishes, right? This day, the last day of the month, was also the morning of the last day of the medical class. Kakashi brought Sasuke and Hinata to Naruto's house early in the morning, to scrounge for breakfast. He skillfully pried open Naruto's door lock and found Naruto on the sofa. Kakashi wrinkled his nose. He smelled the aroma of breakfast, but Naruto was still lying on the sofa. The only explanation was that Naruto was pretending to be asleep. Kakashi didn't call Naruto. The electric arc in his hand flew out and shot directly at Naruto. Just as the electric arc was about to hit Naruto, an ice wall rose from the ground and blocked the electric arc. Then, the electric arc was directed away. If one looked carefully, they would find that there was a naked copper wire connected to the ice wall. After the ice wall blocked the electric arc, it turned into water and spread on the ground. It flowed to Kakashi's feet. Kakashi retreated. The water on the ground expanded and separated into mist. In an instant, it turned into snowflakes and drifted to every corner of the house. Kakashi couldn't avoid it. Naturally, snowflakes stuck to his body. Then, more and more snowflakes swarmed over, wrapping Kakashi into a snowman. The snowflakes turned into water and then froze into ice. A lifelike ice sculpture of Kakashi was completed. Naruto jumped up from the sofa and laughed heartily. "Teacher Kakashi, I've tolerated you for a long time." At this time, Kakashi's voice came from behind Naruto. "Oh, you've been tolerating me for a long time." "Oh no." The only explanation for the current situation was that it was only Kakashi's clone that was frozen. Then the real body, ZZ, arcs of lightning struck Naruto's body, but they didn't cause any damage. Naruto stepped on the bare wires and said proudly with his hands on his waist, "When I'm prepared, your electric shock is useless against me." At this moment, another Kakashi doppelganger walked out of the house next door, holding a three-way plug that only had a ground wire. The metal plugs of the neutral and fire lines were obviously pulled out by someone. Kaka's doppelganger said to Naruto, "What about now?" ZZ, arcs of lightning flowed through the wires to the bare copper wires under Naruto's feet, and then hit Naruto's body along the icicles. Naruto's body began to dance uncontrollably. It was like an epileptic seizure. At the same time, there was a trembling voice. "Ah." A minute later, Naruto, whose hair was smoking, obediently brought the food that had been prepared long ago to the table. He stared at Kakashi with resentment and cursed him to choke to death on the congee with pork and century egg. At the dining table, Kakashi took off his mask and leisurely enjoyed the dictator's breakfast. At the same time, he praised, "Naruto, your ice release has improved again. Have you mastered the secret technique that Naruto 3 taught you?" Naruto bitterly swallowed a mouthful of congee with pork and century egg and replied with resentment, "It's not that simple. That bullshit secret technique requires two hands to be able to independently control ice release. Although I can cast the technique with one hand now, it's easy to mess it up with two hands." Then Kakashi praised Naruto again, "I heard that you also performed very well in the medical ninjutsu class?" Naruto suspiciously asked, "How did you know? Were you secretly spying on me?" Kakashi blew on the hot congee in the spoon. "The medical ninja who taught you went to Naruto 3 several times to ask to transfer you to the medical ninja class, and then Naruto 3 found me." "Huh? There was such a thing?" Naruto asked tentatively, "And then?" Kakashi continued, "Then I met with the medical ninja." During this period, Naruto had been watching Kakashi. Then he found that when talking about Haniwe-sensei, Kakashi blushed. Naruto looked at Sasuke. The two looked at each other and communicated with their eyes. From Sasuke's eyes, Naruto could confirm that Sasuke also noticed it. Then Hinata. Alas, the girl was concentrating on eating the congee with pork and century egg made by Naruto. She didn't even look up, so she missed this historic scene. Kakashi suddenly stopped talking. Naruto and Sasuke said at the same time, "And then?" The tacit understanding between the two made Kakashi alert. He looked up at the two. Sasuke lowered his head as fast as he could and looked at the congee with pork and century egg in the bowl. He seemed to be hesitating whether to eat the century egg or the meat first. Naruto was in the same position. Kakashi swallowed the lean meat in his mouth. After discussion, you have to work part-time as a medical ninja in the hospital whenever you don't have a mission. You can accumulate experience through practice. However, considering your personal freedom, the minimum requirement is to ensure that your clone is on standby in the hospital during the day. Just a clone. This isn't unacceptable. However, compared to this matter, Naruto and Sasuke were more concerned about Kakashi's blushing. Haniwe-sensei was 1.7 meters tall. With high heels, she was 1.75 to 1. 8 meters tall. There weren't many people in Woodleaf who could match Haniwe-sensei in height. Kakashi was 8 meters tall, which was just right. Should I find an opportunity to set them up? After eating, the team began their team cooperation training. In the afternoon, Naruto and Hinata came to Haniwe-sensei's classroom. Originally, Naruto thought that there wouldn't be any lectures on the last day. For example, everyone could have a meal or something. However, Naruto realized that he had underestimated Haniwe-sensei's medical ninja soul. On the last day, Haniwe-sensei brought the 5 of them to a special retirement center in Woodleaf. They went to visit those who survived the battlefield but lost the ability to take care of themselves. Some people lost their arms, some had their legs blown off, some had lower limbs, and some had no limbs at all. Disabled, disfigured, deformed. No one here would point and shout at a person who had lost an arm walking past them, nor would they avoid them in disgust because their faces were burned. They were all incomplete people, but they maintained their equality. This was a world with a different aesthetic from the outside world. At the same time, Naruto noticed that no one here didn't know Haniwe-sensei. When they saw Haniwe-sensei here, everyone's faces were filled with an indescribable smile. That kind of gaze was that of an elder looking at a junior, and also the gratitude of a destitute person looking at a savior. The afternoon passed quickly. Haniwe-sensei brought everyone back to the classroom. The 1-month class ends here. I'm very happy that Sandaime Naruto-sama can make such a reform. I hope that your existence can reduce the number of casualties on the battlefield. Alright, the medical ninja training class ends here. You can all leave. Also, Naruto, you have to report to the hospital tomorrow. After asking for permission, Sandaime Naruto-sama has agreed to add another month of practical classes for you. Naruto was speechless. Chapter 61. The second month after returning from the Snow Country mission, Naruto received a letter from the director of Wind and Cloud Princess. In the letter, he sincerely invited Naruto to shoot a movie with him. There were a lot of unscrupulous words praising him, and Naruto was very happy to read it. But it's impossible to transform from a ninja to a big star, as long as you register as a Woodleaf ninja. Then, for the rest of your life, you will be loyal to the village, loyal to Naruto. This is what is written on the ninja archive. Please do it clearly and clearly. Unless you become a traitor ninja, or like Tsunade, become a person with powerful strength and identity. So far, the only Woodleaf ninja who can wander around the world without listening to Woodleaf Naruto's edict is Tsunade. Throwing the letter from the director aside, Naruto went out of the door and walked to the ninja store. Today is the day the store manager will cast a sword for his daughter. Ring ring. Pushing open the door of the ninja store, a bell rang in his ears, and a voice greeted him, "Welcome." It's the twin sisters. If I remember correctly, the pink-haired one is the older sister, and the aqua-blue one is the younger sister. Naruto slightly bowed back and said, "Hello, where is the store manager?" The pink-haired sister explained to Naruto, replying to the guest, the young lady came to Woodleaf today, and the store manager went outside the village to greet her. The younger sister continued, "Before the store manager left, he asked us to treat you well. He asked you to wait for him in his office, and there is also his design draft for the sword on the table in the office." Young lady? Are they talking about the store manager's daughter? The first image that came to Naruto's mind was the 4-month-old baby on the store manager's wallet. At the same time, Naruto also noticed the problem with the title. Young lady, is it because the theme is a maid, or has it been used a long time ago? If it's a maid theme, shouldn't these two girls call the store manager master? Naruto realized that this store manager suddenly had a layer of mystery to him. He walked into the store manager's office. Naruto habitually sat in the manager's chair. This was not his first time here. After Naruto officially became the store manager's disciple, he no longer treated the store manager as an outsider. The store manager's office was more than 40 square meters. The style was not as serious as Naruto's office. The black and white floor tiles made the room look like a square chessboard. There were 3 bookshelves in the room, all of which were mounted on the wall. The large bookshelf that was connected to the wall was connected to the wall. The kind that hit the ceiling, very atmospheric. 2 of them were on the left and right sides of the desk, and one was behind the chair. The solid wood desk faced the entrance. After Naruto sat down, he picked up an unfolded scroll from the manager's table. It recorded the requirements for the sword forging, the selection of materials, the ratio of each material, and the forging method. Looking at the records was like witnessing the entire process of the sword forging. Naruto paid close attention. The materials included wind-essence stone and thunder-essence stone. In other words, this sword had to support the wind and thunder essence of chakra. Naruto muttered to himself, it actually needs to support 2 types of chakra. The store manager's daughter. Seems like she can't be underestimated. She's also a ninja? As Naruto muttered, the maid with short blue hair brought a cup of coffee to Naruto. She said to Naruto, Miss is not a ninja, she's a swordmaster. You can also say that she's a samurai. Naruto politely thanked her. To make Naruto say thank you, even the store manager did not have this kind of treatment. It could be seen that beautiful women could sometimes stimulate the common sense of etiquette in males. In other words, a beautiful and elegant woman could make a man become delicate. Boys were the same. Of course, naughty children were not included. Naruto was puzzled. Swordmaster? Samurai? Then, may I ask, where does your young miss usually live? The maid with short blue hair said, You're the store manager's apprentice. Of course, I can tell you. Miss usually stays with the mistress. Mistress? The store manager's wife? Naruto continued to gossip, This miss is your store manager's daughter, right? The maid blinked cutely and thought carefully. Then she said, The mistress said that Miss is definitely her biological daughter. As for whether Mrs. Father is the store manager, I don't know. Pooh. Naruto just drank a mouthful of coffee and spat it out. However, Naruto reacted quickly. He turned his head to the side in time and did not spit on the cute girl's face. What followed was a violent cough. The girl quickly came to Naruto's side and helped Naruto massage his back. At the same time, another pink-haired girl ran in and handed Naruto a tissue. Then she saw that Naruto was about to wipe the water on the ground. She quickly said, Let me do this. I'm sorry to have startled you. Naruto shook his head. He raised his hand and the water on the ground gathered together and turned into a coffee water ball. Then, it froze into an ice ball. The twin sisters watched the process of Naruto freezing the coffee into an ice ball. Their eyes were full of excitement. Naruto stopped coughing and barely regained the ability to speak. You did startle me. But what you said just now was a joke, right? The pink-haired sister asked a question and then suddenly realized, oh, so that's what the mistress said. But Miss is indeed the store manager's daughter. Then the blue-haired sister winked playfully and said, Also, let me tell you a secret. The reason why we are here is actually because we have a mission. The mistress asked us to keep an eye on the store manager. If the store manager has frequent contact with other women, we have to bring the store manager to justice. This is a secret. You can't tell the store manager. Naruto blinked. Oh, but he already knows now. As he spoke, Naruto looked behind the blue-haired girl. The blue-haired girl followed Naruto's gaze and turned her head stiffly. Could it be? The store manager is here? However, she did not see anything. She only heard Naruto laughing behind her. The blue-haired girl snorted angrily and then came to the pink-haired sister. The two of them interlocked their fingers and said, Sister, sister, this customer is bad. The store manager ordered us not to give him the dessert. The pink-haired sister replied, Sister, sister, you don't have to worry. I've already finished the dessert. The corner of Naruto's mouth twitched. However, just when Naruto thought that the dessert was really gone, the pink-haired sister suddenly conjured a tray in her hand. On the tray were 2 exquisite pastries. The pink-haired sister said, These pastries are carefully baked by Summer. Please try them. Summer, the blue-haired maid, turned her head away angrily. Chapter 62. Naruto bit off more than half of the pastry in one bite and ate one in 2 bites. But he regretted it as soon as he ate it. This pastry was really too delicious. The way he ate the caterpillar bread was a bit of a waste. So when he ate the second one, he was especially careful. But the cake was only so big. For Naruto, 2 bites could only increase to 4 bites at most. This bread is delicious, Naruto praised. The pair of sisters looked at Naruto and blinked, then looked at each other and said, Sister, do you want to prepare more? The guest seems to have not eaten. Sister, you go and prepare. The guest seems to have not eaten. Naruto blushed when he heard this. He knew that his table manners scared the 2 lovely girls. But, if he could prepare more, it would be good. Well, Naruto still wanted to eat. Naruto touched the back of his head and said insincerely, If it's too troublesome, there's no need. Sia replied, It's not troublesome. Because Miss likes to eat sweets, I prepared a lot today. I'll go and get it for you. With that, the blue-haired little girl left. Right. Naruto pointed to the plate and said, Just now, how did you make the pastry suddenly appear? It looked like a magic trick. The pink-haired sister opened her sleeve and showed it to Naruto. Naruto instantly understood. It turned out that on the girl's wrist, there was a bandage that stored shurikens. That was a ninja's space storage equipment. Sasuke liked to wear it very much. Because it was very convenient to use on the wrist, he could summon a ninja tool with a hook of his finger. It looked like a magic trick. Naruto was surprised and said, You are also a ninja? Then, Sia is also a ninja? Haru Sakuratani nodded and said, Before being a shop assistant, we were the maids of Mississippi recently. Mrs. finished her kendo, so we were sent here. Oh no, it seemed that the store manager was not an ordinary small boss. Naruto thought of another thing. In a month's time, Chunin's exam would be held. By then, Wood Leaf wouldn't be so peaceful. The store manager's daughter came to the Wood Leaf at this time. Hopefully, nothing bad would happen. I'll see how long the store manager's daughter stays at Wood Leaf. After eating another 7 or 8 pastries, Naruto finally brought the store manager back. At the same time, he also saw the store manager's daughter. Her chestnut-colored hair was combed into a fishtail hairstyle. Her skin was pure white, and her body looked very thin. Her ice blue cloak was draped over her body, and one could see the edges and corners of her body. Haru Sakuratani and Natsuya Sakuragi simultaneously saluted the newcomer. Naruto was stunned for a moment before he introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. The store manager's daughter nodded slightly. Canon Chiba. Nice to meet you. Where's the store manager? Naruto remembered that the 2 maids seemed to have mentioned. Naruto saw a person smiling at him. This person was somewhat familiar. His silhouette was very similar to the store manager. Naruto subconsciously asked, This is your brother? Everyone followed Naruto's line of sight and saw the so-called brother. The girls couldn't help but laugh. Haru Sakuratani, the pink-haired maid, reminded him. That's the store manager. Naruto's face was cold. Taking a closer look, it was indeed the store manager. His originally messy hair was carefully combed, and his stubble was also cleaned. Because of this, he looked more than 30 years younger. Based on the store manager's current appearance alone, he could be described as handsome. There was also the store manager's attire. Naruto had only seen this kind of attire on Kaido before. Kaido was the one who hired Zabuza and Haku for the Wave Country mission. In short, after the arrival of his daughter, the store manager felt like he had changed his appearance and become a new person. The store manager was very proud of himself. He straightened his back and said, How is it? Master, I just need to dress up a little, and I'll be very charming. Naruto nodded seriously and said, You do look a little bit like a dog. The store manager vomited blood. After a simple introduction, the store manager let Haru Sakuratani and Natsuya Sakuragi take their daughter to rest. Then he quickly changed his clothes and signaled Naruto to follow. They arrived at the stone room at the fastest speed. Naruto joked. So mysterious. Do you want to give your baby daughter a surprise? Don't you want her to know in advance? The store manager took out various materials from the storage scroll. It's her birthday, so I should leave a surprise. How is it? Did you see what I told you to see? What do you think of my design? Naruto thought about the structure on the scroll. The design is very good, but the materials seem to be used to make 2 swords. Why does your daughter have 2 swords? The store manager looked at Naruto in surprise and praised, "Not bad. I deliberately didn't write it clearly on the scroll. I wanted to test you." His guess was confirmed. Naruto continued, "If you want to make 2 swords, the amount of live steel is too small. You wrote 10 grams on the scroll. If you want to increase it by 4 times, it's best to use 40 grams. Each sword is 20 grams. The store manager hesitated and shook his head. 40 grams is too much, a waste. Naruto thought for a while and said, "If you want to save the live steel, you can use the 3 alloys that were decomposed from the broadsword last time. Because those 3 alloys have been fused with live steel, they will be more compatible with the live steel." The store manager nodded thoughtfully. Then he frowned. "In that case, all the shares will have to be calculated again. I'm afraid we can't." Before the store manager finished speaking, Naruto threw the scroll over. The store manager caught it subconsciously and was stunned. "What? Don't tell me. You've finished calculating?" Naruto smiled and said, "You were gone for too long. When you had nothing to do and were eating snacks, I had nothing to do, so I calculated it. But even if you use those 3 alloys, you still need at least 20 grams of live steel. My suggestion is to increase it to 30 grams. The reason is the same as my sword. Live steel with cyan pattern steel can increase the ductility." The store manager opened the scroll and looked at it. He asked curiously, "Huh? Why are there 2 completely different calculations?" Naruto explained, "This is based on your requirements for dual attributes. You didn't say whether a sword should have dual attributes or one sword should have only one attribute, so I made 2 sets of calculations." The store manager looked at Naruto's head strangely for a long time. Naruto asked curiously, "What are you looking at? Why are you looking at me strangely?" The store manager exclaimed, "Don't you see that your head is much bigger than others? How did you complete such a huge amount of calculations? I used 1 day to do this calculation, but you actually came up with 2 sets of calculations in the time it took to eat pastries. It's a bit shocking." Naruto rolled his eyes. "How can a genius like me with an IQ of 280 be compared to people like you who only have an IQ of 100? 2 plans, which one do you choose? 1 sword with 1 attribute, or both swords with 2 attributes?" Naruto asked casually, but he was actually very concerned about the store manager's answer. 1 sword with 1 attribute would only make Naruto think that the store manager's daughter was good at 2 types of chakra or 2 types of swordsmanship. But if the 2 swords had 2 different attributes, Naruto had to guess that it was a special bloodline limit. Naruto had never heard of a bloodline limit formed by the fusion of wind and thunder. The store manager smiled and said, "1 sword with 1 attribute will do." Phew. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief, but he was also a bit disappointed. Could it be that he was too sensitive after learning the ice evasion bloodline limit? The store manager said, "Naruto is here. Let's start refining the metal." Maybe he was thinking too much. Chapter 63. According to the store manager, Canon Chiba's birthday was in 2 weeks. At that time, the ninja shop would be closed for a while, and her family would go home to celebrate. Hearing this news, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. In that case, he could avoid Chunin's exam. The store manager also suggested that he send another solo mission to Naruto, and then take Naruto to the birthday party. However, Naruto refused because of Chunin's exam. The store manager was a little disappointed. It was obvious that he wanted to invite Naruto. However, he could also understand the importance of Chunin's exam to Naruto, so he made an appointment for the next time. Naruto smiled and agreed, saying that he would go as long as there was no mission. The two swords came out one after another, and Naruto frowned. The weight was not in line with the calculation. The store manager saw Naruto frown and asked, "What's wrong? What's wrong with this sword?" The sword in Naruto's hand was very simple, and it had one thing in common with Naruto's sword, which was that there was no sword case. The store manager said that there was no need for dual swords, and Naruto didn't care. However, this sword had an arc, a very slight arc, and it was very beautiful. Because the materials used were green steel and wind essence stone, the color was very similar to Naruto's green sleeve. Naruto weighed the sword and said, "The weight of this sword is not in line with the calculation." The store manager took the sword and closed his eyes to feel it carefully. Then, he weighed it on the scale and compared it to the calculated value. There was an extra 10 grams, and he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "It seems that there was a problem when I cast it." Naruto shook his head. "It's also possible that I made a mistake when I used the materials." The store manager shook his head and said, "It can't be your mistake. You can feel the difference with your hands. How could you use the wrong amount?" There was nothing wrong with this sentence, and it was also what Naruto was puzzled about. The shop owner waved the sword and tested it. Fortunately, the sword wasn't affected too much. It's still within an acceptable range. After that, the matter was left unsettled. After the second sword was forged, Naruto found that the second sword was also slightly heavier. However, because of the situation with the first sword, he did not pay too much attention to it. The second sword was made of thunder-patterned steel. It was light purple in color and looked very elegant. It also had a very small arc. The two swords looked like they were carved from the same mold. The curvature was also exactly the same. Then, the two swords were sheathed and sealed in the scabbards that had been prepared beforehand. The manager was very grateful to Naruto. He patted Naruto's shoulder and said, 30 grams of steel is a lot of wealth. I feel a bit sorry for using it. If you need any help, just tell me. If I can do it, I won't hesitate." Naruto shook his head and said, "I only used 30 grams. There's still 930 grams left. It's not a problem." The manager patted Naruto's shoulder again. He was so grateful that he could not speak. Then, the manager took out the remaining steel and handed it to Naruto. "I left Woodleaf this time to celebrate my daughter's birthday. I might not be able to come back for a few months. I'll leave this steel with you first, in case I'm not around when you need it. Also, here are the keys to the shop, the forge, and my house in Woodleaf. If you need anything in the shop, just take it and write it down in a book. You can use the forge as much as you want. There's still plenty of high-temperature coke. You can play with it for a while. Also, my house is very big. When I'm not around, you can take care of it." Naruto was a bit stunned. This bunch of keys was extraordinary. It was almost all of the manager's belongings in Woodleaf. It was handed over to him just like that? Naruto subconsciously wanted to refuse. Deep down, he did not like to owe others and did not like to accept other people's kindness. But the manager interrupted him. "I'm not being polite with you. You don't have to be polite with me. Take it." Naruto finally raised his hand and took it. Naruto had been to the manager's house before. It was really big. It was built in the suburbs of Woodleaf. It was a standalone villa. There was not only a courtyard in front, but more accurately, a huge garden. In addition, there was an underground wine cellar, a winery, and a vineyard. It was extremely luxurious. There was an open-air bath in the backyard. The villa itself had 3 floors. Horses could run in the corridor. That red carpet. Sigh. Even the oil painting on the wall was not an ordinary imitation. Simply put, Naruto wanted a villa with a front and backyard after going to the manager's house. This time, he directly moved in. "Tesuke. How nice. The manager sealed the 2 swords in the scroll and took Naruto home. He had dinner with his daughter. According to the manager, they would be leaving Woodleaf tomorrow. When the 2 of them reached home, Canon Chiba was watching Princess of Wind and Cloud while holding a bowl of popcorn. The expression on her face was the same as the one on Hinata's face when she first saw Princess of Wind and Cloud. Clearly, this Canon Chiba had become a fan of Wind and Cloud. Naruto looked at the equipment used to play the movie. He sighed inwardly. What a rich person's life. Such professional equipment was no different from a cinema. After the movie ended, Canon Chiba finally saw Naruto and greeted him. Sorry, I was too engrossed in the movie. I didn't notice you guys coming back. Naruto shook his head. It's fine. I am surprised that Hua Yin also likes to watch Princess of Wind and Cloud. When Princess of Wind and Cloud was mentioned, Hua Yin's reserved manner immediately disappeared. Instead, she danced with joy as she chatted with Naruto. The manager took the opportunity to leave while the 2 of them were chatting. As Chiba spoke, she became disappointed again. I wonder when the sequel will be released. I am so frustrated waiting. Naruto smiled. It will be out soon. As far as I know, the filming has already been completed. They are now doing post-production. Chiba was surprised. Is that true? But how did you know? Naruto briefly explained the mission of Snow Country. He said that he was in contact with the director and that he knew the female lead, Fujifong Shuehui, which was the stage name of Wind and Cloud. When Chiba heard that Naruto had saved Fujifong Shuehui, she was so excited that she almost cried. She repeatedly thanked Naruto for helping her. Then, Naruto talked about the director inviting him to act in the movie. Chiba's eyes were already sparkling. Wow. Was that true? Then I will have to get your autograph first. Naruto waved his hand. It is indeed interesting to be a superstar, but I am now a ninja of Woodleaf. I can't do whatever I want. On the other hand, you are free. Why don't I write a letter to the director and recommend you? When Chiba heard this, she was instantly stunned. She excitedly pointed at herself and said uncertainly, Are you kidding? Can I do it? I am not good at anything except swords and knives. Naruto could see that Chiba was very interested in this. He said with certainty, If you really go on the path to stardom, your swords and knives will be a great advantage. Believe me, as long as you want to go, the director will definitely let you be the female lead. Chiba's face was red with excitement. She said in surprise, Are you serious? Naruto told Naruto about how the director fearlessly held up the camera to record the real battle between the ninjas. Believe me, if the director knew that you're so beautiful and capable, he would have immediately made the decision. Naruto, do you know? The director wanted me to be an actress because he liked my shadow clone. You are different. You have the aura of a goddess. Canon Chiba felt like she was flying in the clouds. Ahem. Let's stop chatting. It's time to eat. When the 2 were happily chatting, the restaurant manager stood at the door and cleared his throat. Chapter 64. After the tea talk, the store manager asked Naruto to stay for the night. He asked Naruto to choose anything except Canon Chiba's room. At the same time, he asked Naruto about the director's character, age, whether he had a wife and children, and so on. In the end, Naruto concluded, Mr. Store Manager, are you worried about the unspoken rules? The store manager was stunned and asked, What do you mean by unspoken rules? Naruto explained, That's what you're worried about. The store manager rubbed his hands embarrassedly and nodded, Yes. Once Chiba decides to do something, even 10 cows can't pull her back. This time, I think she really wants to be an actress, so I'm a little worried. Naruto comforted him. After Chiba's birthday, the 2 swords will be given away. Even if the director has bad intentions, he will become a eunuch. Didn't you say Chiba is very good at swordsmanship? What are you worried about? By the way, I'm curious about something. Mr. Store Manager, why do you call your daughter by her surname? The store manager was stunned by the question. He said embarrassedly, "My daughter has her mother's surname. When I met her mother, she didn't allow me to call her by her full name. She said I was a toad who wanted to eat swan meat and was shameless. So I kept calling her Chiba Chiba. Later, when I had a daughter, I called her Little Chiba. When my daughter grew up, her mother asked me to call her by her full name, so Little Chiba became Chiba." It sounds very affectionate. You'll get used to it after a long time. Naruto nodded. Recently, he was more and more curious about the store manager, Naruto. At first, he thought he was just a half-baked swordsmith who didn't have good swordsmithing skills and relied on the manuscripts passed down by his father. He opened a ninja store and lived a comfortable life. But recently, the more he learned about him, the more unusual he felt. The store manager also started to talk. "Actually, when I was young, I also wanted to be a big star. At that time, I was a poor boy who wanted to make money all day. There's money to be made as a celebrity, and it's not dangerous. How great is that?" But in the end, he didn't become a superstar and became a mercenary. At that time, all the countries were at war. Ordinary people didn't feel anything. Those who died were all ninjas. I was hired continuously until I met your master's wife. As the store manager talked about the past, Naruto listened obediently. Unknowingly, a few hours had passed. Naruto's vision suddenly blurred, and he was confused for a moment. The store manager saw it and asked, "Did I say too much? Are you sleepy?" Naruto waved his hand and shook his head. It took him a while to recover from the dizziness before he replied, "My clone has been working in the hospital on my behalf for the whole day. I just got off work. After removing my clone, I received a lot of information, and it made me dizzy." The shopkeeper was stunned and said in disbelief, "You let your clone replace you?" Naruto came back to his senses and nodded. The store manager maintained his original expression and continued to ask in disbelief, "One replacement for a whole day?" Naruto nodded, "Yes. What's wrong?" The store manager only spat out 2 words, "Monster. Don't tell me you've been doing this every day for the past half a month." Naruto asked in a daze, "What's wrong with that? If I didn't do this, how would I have so much free time?" The store manager spat out 2 words again, "Pervert." Naruto rolled his eyes and understood what the store manager meant. He said arrogantly, "You're just jealous of me, Chakra. Jealousy makes people ugly. Store manager, you just became handsome. Don't go back to being a wretched uncle." The store manager also rolled his eyes and said, "I'm handsome. I don't care about my appearance. What wretched? Do you know how to use words? I suspect your vocabulary is lacking." The two of them chatted for a while, and the store manager finally got up and was about to leave. Before leaving, he said, "This is your home. You can walk around wherever you want. Don't be too restrained. Of course, don't be too casual. You're absolutely not allowed to go to Chenye's room." Naruto rolled his eyes and didn't bother to talk to the store manager. He waved his hand and asked him to leave. Unexpectedly, after the store manager left, he turned his head and said, "Even if that girl asks you to go, you can't go." Naruto was stunned and said in disbelief, "Ask me to go? Is that possible?" The store manager added, "Of course, I'm not asking you to go because of something bad. I'm afraid that girl doesn't have any gender awareness and wants to chat with you in the room. She's very interested in becoming a star, so she'll probably want to chat with you." Naruto blinked and said suspiciously, "Is that why you've been talking about life in my room for hours?" The store manager couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He subconsciously touched the stubble on his chin that was no longer there. Then, he changed the topic and said, "I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do." "Well, go to bed early. I'm leaving." Naruto, Mother Asterisk Cur. After the store manager left, it was already 10 o'clock. Sleep. Naruto felt that it was still too early. He decided to cultivate for an hour or 2. However, after condensing the icicle in his hand, Naruto was a little worried. This wasn't his home. If he didn't control it well, the icicle would shoot out again, and turn this house into a hornet's nest. That would be hilarious. Then, sleep? Naruto lay down. The bed was very comfortable. The quilt was newly dried and filled with the smell of sunshine. However, after talking with the store manager for so long, he was very excited. It was a little difficult to fall asleep directly. He tossed and turned on the bed several times but still couldn't fall asleep. Finally, Naruto sat up and decided to cultivate in the building's training room. The walls of the store manager's training room were welded with 10-centimeter thick iron plates. Even if he could shoot an icicle at the wall, it was absolutely impossible for him to shoot a hole in the wall at this stage. That place was just right for him. Out of the door, Naruto walked in the corridor where horses could run. Naruto compared the corridor with his home. The result was that this corridor was 5 or 6 times the size of his home. He couldn't help but think of a sentence. Do you really think that rich people are as happy as you imagine? You're wrong. The happiness of rich people isn't as happy as you imagine. Their happiness is something you can't imagine at all. After walking down the corridor for a minute, Naruto finally arrived at the door of the training room. Unexpectedly, the lights in the training room were on and he could vaguely hear some sounds. Someone was cultivating in the training room. Who was it? The store manager? It shouldn't be. Then, the store manager's daughter? Naruto's curiosity rose. He pushed the door open and walked in. He was surprised to see the people inside. It turned out to be the maid sisters. At this time, the two of them were wearing training clothes and holding bamboo swords in their hands. They were fighting. Their attacks were very fierce and fast. With a slash, the two swords intersected. A dull collision sound was like 2 big hammers that were used to forge swords colliding with each other. Dang! The sound was so loud that it made people dizzy. This wasn't the sound of an ordinary bamboo sword at all. Naruto smacked his lips and murmured, "The strength of these 2 girls might not lose to me." The 2 of them noticed Naruto and stopped. The girl with aqua blue hair smiled at Naruto and said, "Customer, you're really diligent. It's so late and you're still in the training room. Do you want to spar a few times? We heard from the store manager that you also know how to use a sword." Spar a few times? Naruto was a little tempted. It wasn't that he wanted to test the strength of the 2 girls, but Naruto could see that the 2 girls were much stronger than him in terms of swordsmanship. This was a very good learning opportunity. Naruto scratched his head. "My swordsmanship is very bad. I hope you won't laugh at me." The pink-haired sister walked over and offered the bamboo sword in her hand with both hands. "Customer, you can use my sword." Naruto accepted it with both hands. It was out of politeness, but when the sword was in his hand, he couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately, he was holding it with both hands. Otherwise, the weight of the sword would have dislocated his arm. The pink-haired sister saw that Naruto was almost flipped over by the sword and quickly raised her hand to press on the sword. She apologized, "Sorry, I forgot to take back chakra." The bamboo sword suddenly became lighter when the girl's fingers pressed on it. Naruto also understood that this bamboo sword most likely had the same function as the hammer that the store manager gave him. It could be used to change the weight by injecting chakra. After taking back chakra, the pink-haired sister bowed and apologized, "It's my negligence. I'm really sorry." The moment he lowered his head, Naruto accidentally glanced along the collar. He didn't see anything that he shouldn't have. The girl's training clothes had a vest. The style of the vest was very familiar to Naruto. It was the vest that could be loaded with special heavy metals. Chapter 65. 10 minutes after fighting with Natsuya Sakuragi, sweat slowly flowed down the outline of Naruto's face. His heavy breathing was like a bellows, panting heavily. Although he still held the wooden sword tightly in his hand, it was no longer stable. On the other side, Natsuya Sakuragi's aura was calm and her eyes were sharp. Her breathing was slow and long, silent. There was a sense of horror in the tranquility. Why did the store manager have such a little monster under his command? Naruto's heart was not calm at all. Although he had expected to lose before the fight, this was a sword competition after all. After all, Naruto had only just come into contact with the way of the sword. However, from the initial probing attack being sent flying, to chakra erupting with all her strength, Naruto was being crushed from beginning to end. His opponent was like a spring. The more power Naruto exerted, the greater the rebound force. In this situation, Naruto even wanted to use the 8 inner hidden gates. During these 5 seconds, Natsuya Sakuragi did not take the initiative to attack. Naruto took a breath, and the bamboo blade in his hand gradually stabilized. His breathing slowed down. He took a deep breath, sprinted, and slashed. It was a fierce attack, fast, and explosive. Haru Sakuratani raised her sword to meet it. The two bamboo swords slashed together, competing with each other. Naruto's blood vessels expanded, and his muscles bulged like tight springs. He tried his best to squeeze out all his strength. But on the other side, Natsuya Sakuragi's slender body did not fluctuate much. She calmly contended with Naruto. Then, she suddenly slashed out with her sword and sent Naruto flying again. Naruto's breathing rhythm was broken again. His sweat flowed down his body, and his clothes were already soaked. Natsuya Sakuragi stopped and said seriously, "Let's stop here for now. Customer, you've been using brute force from beginning to end. There's no technique to speak of. Plus, there's no rhythm to the battle and your battle awareness is weak." Seeing that Naruto's face was getting darker and darker, Natsuya Sakuragi's serious face suddenly turned into a cute smile as she encouraged, "But it's still pretty good for beginners." Naruto took a deep breath and said seriously, "Let's do it again. This time, I'll use all my strength." Naruto decided to try using the 8 inner hidden gates. Natsuya Sakuragi looked at Naruto's sweaty appearance and shook her head. "Sir, you have already used all." Naruto shook his head and said seriously, "What comes next is my true full strength. The first gate of the 8 inner hidden gates. Gate of opening, gate of opening." The moment the first gate of the 8 inner hidden gates opened, the restriction on the brain was lifted. His field of vision suddenly widened, and his eyes lit up. Naruto's hearing increased exponentially, and he could even hear his own heartbeat. But this time using the 8 inner hidden gates was much faster than the first time. 2 seconds later, the light in front of him was no longer dazzling, and the sound of his heartbeat gradually disappeared. Only the things in front of him became clear, and he became more sensitive to the sounds outside. Natsuya Sakuragi sensed some changes, and her expression became serious. Naruto said, "Come on." He used chakra, started, and sprinted. The unrestrained chakra was like a runaway wild horse, and all her strength was poured into her legs. The soles of her feet stepped on the ground. With a muffled sound, Naruto shot out like an arrow from a bow. His speed was 5 times faster than before. His sword moved from the bottom left to the top right, and he used his body's speed to slash up. Clang! Under this blow, Natsuya Sakuragi took a step back. But soon, Naruto discovered that it wasn't him who pushed her back, but his opponent who took the initiative to step back and use her body to reduce the force. The two swords rubbed against each other and slid away from each other. The two brushed past each other and changed positions. Naruto felt that his attack had hit cotton. At this time, Natsuya Sakuragi carefully observed Naruto, and she was somewhat puzzled as to why Naruto's speed and strength had suddenly increased. Did he remove the weight? From the beginning, she had asked Naruto to remove the weight, but Naruto didn't remove it because she didn't want to. She carefully observed Naruto's body movements and found that they weren't smooth. They rose slowly and fell quickly, which was a sign that the weight was still on his body. Natsuya Sakuragi became serious. "Although I don't know what happened, you are indeed stronger now." Then the two of them began to fight. The rhythm of their attacks became faster and faster, and their momentum gradually resembled the previous battle between the two sisters. Half an hour later, Naruto's physical strength was exhausted and he finally fell to the ground. When Naruto was about to get up, Natsuya Sakuragi threw away the sword in her hand. "Let's stop here. Although I don't know what method you used to increase your strength, Your body has already reached its limit. I can't watch my guest hurt himself. Naruto lowered his head and was silent. Natsuya Sakuragi thought that Naruto had suffered a blow, so she went into coaxing mode. How about I prepare some delicious pastries for you tomorrow? Naruto rolled his eyes and threw the bamboo sword to the side. At the same time, he removed the state of the 8 inner hidden gates. The moment he removed it, Naruto's body, which had just struggled to sit up, fell down again. He wanted to get up again, but he couldn't do it. He had lost control of his muscles. This was a sign of exhaustion. Haru Sakuratani came to Naruto's side and checked Naruto's physical condition. She blamed the two of them. You didn't control your strength. What nonsense. Natsuya Sakuragi pouted. It's my fault. How about sending him to the hospital? Let the medical ninja treat Naruto. Medical ninja? This reminded Naruto. Naruto smiled and said, The medical ninja will be here soon. Wait, I'll show you a trick. Then he squeezed the little strength that his body had just recovered and raised his hands. His hands moved to his chest and crossed his fingers. Multiple shadow clone jutsu. Bang! Bang! 2 Naruto clones appeared beside Naruto. Then Naruto's clone said to Haru Sakuratani and Sia, Stay away. The patient needs enough oxygen. Then the two of them gathered chakra in their hands and used the immortal palm technique to treat Naruto's body. Natsuya Sakuragi and Haru Sakuratani opened their mouths wide. The two of them looked at each other and said in surprise, There's such a thing. Our guest knows medical ninjutsu? This was indeed very powerful. 5 minutes later, a lively Naruto stood up again. The 2 clones bowed to the Sakuratani sisters very politely and then disappeared. This was a habit that he had developed in the hospital. Natsuya Sakuragi's eyes were filled with little stars of worship. She sighed and said, Do you want to continue sparring? Naruto regained his senses and replied, I've already realized the difference between us, so I won't mess around anymore. Although medical ninjutsu can help me recover, my body needs to rest and recuperate. Otherwise, my cells won't be able to bear the burden and will start dividing again, which will shorten my lifespan. The Sakuratani sisters nodded as if they understood. Natsuya Sakuragi said with some admiration, But, you're so amazing. You know ice release and medical ninjutsu. If you really go all out, I might not be your opponent. Naruto smiled bitterly. Forget it. Tell me how much weight you're carrying first. Natsuya Sakuragi chuckled embarrassedly, then raised her hand and gestured a number. At first, she gestured with 2 fingers, but when her sister secretly glared at her, she retracted one of her fingers and only gestured one. Natsuya Sakuragi, he, because of our special physiques, we're naturally stronger than ordinary people. But I believe that our guest is so amazing that he'll soon surpass us. Naruto's mind was thinking about the unit after 1. By the way, how's your milady's strength compared to yours? Natsuya Sakuragi shook her head like a rattle drum and hurriedly said, I can't compare to Milady at all. Milady can beat me just like I can beat you. Naruto. This comparison shocked and saddened Naruto. Chapter 66. The exhaustion caused by using the Hashiman Tonku allowed Naruto to sleep peacefully that night. No one came to disturb him at night. The next day, Tion, Naruto woke up with a stretch and used the shadow clone technique in a daze. Then he opened his eyes in a daze and saw that the clone had left, so he fell asleep again. Needless to say, the clone had gone to the hospital for an internship. However, what Naruto didn't expect was that the clone would meet Kakashi in the hospital. No, to be precise, Kakashi went to the hospital to find Naruto. In the hospital, Kakashi called out to Naruto, I didn't expect you to be so diligent now. I went to your house early this morning to look for you, but I found that you had already left. Naruto's clone bowed and said, What's the matter? Kakashi looked up and down at Naruto's clone. At this time, Naruto gave him the feeling that he had matured a lot. He did things by the book and had the self-discipline of a medical ninja, but Kakashi always felt that this didn't conform to Naruto's style, so he exploded, "Naruto, is this a clone?" The clone was very honest and nodded, "Yes, is there a problem?" Kakashi's smiling expression instantly turned into a dead fish's eyes. "No problem. I came to you today because I have something to tell you. I want you to return to the team." "Okay, I will tell Hana about your matter. You can tell this news to the main body. The rendezvous point is at the usual place." However, the clone stood still and said, "I can't leave until Hana-sensei says it's time to get off work." Kakashi stared at Naruto's clone with dead fish eyes. "Is this a death order?" The clone replied seriously, "Death order." Kakashi rolled his eyes and gathered the thunder attribute chakra in his hand. The simplified version of Chidori directly pierced through Naruto's clone's chest. Naruto's clone stared blankly at Kakashi. Then, with a bang, it disappeared. Kakashi clapped his hands and said, "How simple. You can go back like this." At the same time, Naruto, who was still lazing in bed, was awakened by the sharp pain in his chest. After skimming through the messages sent by his doppelganger, Naruto crawled out of bed weakly. Looks like the good days are coming to an end. After a simple freshening up, Naruto was about to pick up the key and leave when he raised his hand and pulled it back. The store manager was kind to him, and he lived quite comfortably here. But, if he continued to live here, he would inevitably cause trouble for the store manager. After all, there were many people watching him in the wood leaf. "Let's just assume that I've fallen here." Naruto smiled, put on his clothes, and left the house. Before leaving, he naturally had to say goodbye to the store manager. Because the store manager and the others were also leaving the wood leaf today. "Sorry, the captain told me to go back to the team. I can't see you off." The store manager waved his hand indifferently. "This is a small matter. Your Chunin exam is a big deal." When Canon Chiba heard that Naruto was leaving, she reminded him, that, you said you would introduce me to that director. Don't forget." Naruto smiled and took out a letter. "I wrote the letter last night. You just need to add a photo of yourself and send it out. It's more or less done." Hana took the letter from Naruto's hand. Her face was red from happiness and she looked very cute. She asked, "Can I take a look at this letter?" Naruto nodded. "Of course. You can add anything you want." The letter was opened. The first part was about Naruto rejecting the director's invitation. He expressed that he was now a wood leaf ninja and could not become an actor. Then, he introduced Canon Chiba to the director. In the letter, he described that Hana's beauty was not inferior to Princess Snowflake. She had excellent sword skills and she loved movies. She was a very promising candidate. After reading it, Canon Chiba's beautiful eyes lit up. She was in high spirits and she bowed deeply to Naruto. However, Naruto avoided her. Naruto said modestly, "It's just a small matter. You don't have to be so formal. Just treat it as an early birthday present for Senior Hana." Canon Chiba was very happy. She held the letter in her hands like it was a treasure and praised, "This is the best present I've received this year. No other." The best present? Naruto secretly looked at the store manager. The store manager's face was already dark. Obviously, in the store manager's heart, the best present should be prepared by him. However, if he thought about it carefully, even in that present, Naruto seemed to have put in a lot of effort. Naruto waved goodbye and said, "Okay, I should go. Otherwise, my captain will call me again. See you next time." Canon Chiba invited him before leaving. "I'll let it go this time. Next time, you must come to Hana's birthday." Naruto nodded with a smile. "Wait. Guest, you forgot your key." Natsuya Sakuragi ran over with the key. Naruto was dumbfounded. This time, the store manager scolded, "Take the key with you. It's fine if you leave it at home, but if you leave the key outside, I'll let you have a taste of your ass the next time we meet." Should he take it or not? The store manager looked at him. Canon Chiba looked at him. Natsuya Sakuragi and Haru Sakuratani, who was standing a little further away, were also looking at him. Naruto sighed in his heart and raised his hand to take it. "Ah, I got it." After Naruto left, Canon Chiba asked Natsuya Sakuragi, "Last night, you said that Naruto's swordsmanship is terrible?" Natsuya Sakuragi replied, "Yes, yes. He only relies on brute force to forge a sword. It feels like he's waving a hammer." Hearing this comparison, Canon Chiba chuckled. Natsuya Sakuragi was puzzled. "Why are you asking this, Missy?" Canon Chiba smiled. "He gave me such a good birthday present. I'm thinking of what to give him in return." The rest of Class 7 had already gathered. They were all waiting for Naruto. When Naruto arrived, Kakashi looked at Naruto with dead fish eyes. "I hope your internship at the hospital for more than half a month didn't affect your training." Naruto promised, "I definitely didn't slack off at all." Then he asked, "Teacher Kakashi, after more than half a month, have you finished fusing your bloodline limit?" Kakashi's face darkened. After a long time, he squeezed out a sentence. "Soon." Then he changed the topic. "I gathered all of you today to inform you of something. The third generation has set the date for Chunin's exam. It's tomorrow." Kakashi took out 3 palm-sized pieces of paper and handed them to the 3 of them. "This is the application form. Sign your name on it and hand it to the school's room 301 before 4 o'clock tomorrow." Naruto blinked his eyes and glanced at the application form. This isn't compulsory, if I don't sign." Kakashi turned his head. Electric arcs jumped on his hands. Naruto's face darkened. "Okay. I will sign it." Kakashi smiled and turned to do his own thing. Naruto saw that Kakashi was trying to fuse the 2 chakra attributes again. He quietly went to the corner and habitually held the shovel, planning to dig a hole. Kakashi's veins throbbed on his forehead. He suddenly turned again and shouted at Naruto, who was about to dig a hole with a shovel. "I can't cause an explosion now." Naruto slowly put down the shovel and carefully replied, "Oh." Kakashi turned around. Naruto turned back and whispered to Sasuke and Hinata, "Really?" Sasuke jumped directly onto a big tree. Hinata explained, "Although there won't be an explosion, there will occasionally be a flood or something." As they were talking, a wave suddenly hit them. On purpose. It was definitely on purpose. Naruto raised his hand and Chakra's ice attribute changed. The wave directly turned into an ice wall. He said disdainfully, "That's it? I just happened to be his nemesis." Then he jumped and proudly jumped onto the ice wall. But he didn't expect that the ice was electrified. After standing on it, he lost control of his body and slid down along the beautiful arc formed by the wave. He slid directly to Kakashi's feet. Kakashi grinned. "You're my nemesis? ZZ." Electric arcs flowed on Kakashi's body. Naruto shook his head. He wanted to admit defeat and beg for mercy. But when the words were about to come out of his mouth, they were changed by the electric current. Chapter 67. On the day of Chunin's exam. On a big tree far away from the school, Hinata, Naruto, and Sasuke sat in a row. Hinata looked at the time and said, "Hey, Naruto-kun, it's already 3:30. Do we still have to wait?" Naruto lazily looked up at the sky and said, "It's troublesome to go early. It's good to go on time. Let's go at 3:50. Hinata nodded obediently. "Oh." The wind blew gently, and the leaves rustled. Time passed quietly between the swaying shadows of the trees. Naruto looked at the clouds in the sky and asked Sasuke, "Hey, Sasuke, for you, if there was a way to quickly improve your strength in front of you, would you give it up?" Sasuke was resting with his eyes closed. When he heard Naruto's question, he opened his eyes. Looking into the distance, he answered directly without thinking, "For me, improving my strength is everything." Naruto looked at the clouds in the sky changing shape. The clouds gradually became longer under the blowing of the wind, twisting and turning like a big snake. Sasuke will eventually go to Orochimaru's place. Yesterday, Kakashi seemed to have said that he had nothing to teach Sasuke. Then, Hinata reported the time, Naruto-kun, it's 3:50. Naruto took a deep breath and said, "Then let's go. The fastest way is to enter directly from the outside." Enter from the outside. Under Naruto's lead, the three of them didn't go through the main entrance. Instead, they climbed directly along the wall to the third floor of the ninja school and climbed in through the window. This gorgeous entrance attracted a lot of attention as soon as they entered the room. More than half of the 100 people in the room looked over. Being stared at by so many people, Hinata blushed and hid behind Naruto. In the crowd, Pocket also saw the three people here and recognized Naruto and Sasuke. He was about to walk over when it was exactly 4:00. Pang! Smoke curled up and more than 10 examiners appeared from the smoke. "You must be tired of waiting. My name is Marino Ibiki. I'm the invigilator for Chunin's first exam." He was tall and muscular, wearing a black windbreaker, black gloves, and a black headscarf. His entire body was almost enveloped in darkness. There was a scar on his face that stretched from the upper left corner to the lower right corner. The moment this invigilator appeared, an invisible pressure enveloped the entire examination hall. Behind him, there were more than 10 examiners standing in a dark mass with a playful look on their faces. "All right, let's begin Chunin's first exam. First, hand in your application form in order, then receive your number plate and sit in the corresponding position. The written exam papers will be distributed after you are done." The crowd began to line up to receive their number plates. Naruto took this opportunity to observe the ninjas who were taking the exam. Most of them were wearing wood leaf forehead protectors, but he had never seen them before. They should be genin who had accumulated over the years. Naruto's gaze swept across these people's faces casually, and then began to look for a target. Someone was looking at him? Not at him, but at Hinata. That person had long and straight black hair, fair skin, and a slender figure. However, it was not Shuei's good girl, but Shuei's good man, Hinata's cousin, Hinata Ninji. Naruto smiled and waved at that person. This was his future brother-in-law. That person had delicate features. When he saw Naruto, he frowned, and then turned his head away with a disgusted look. Hinata noticed that Naruto was greeting others, so she followed Naruto's gaze and saw Hinata Ninji. Her expression suddenly became a little depressed and nervous. "Ninji, Nisan." Naruto raised his hand and patted Hinata's shoulder, whispering, "Are you afraid of that person? Do you need me to teach him a lesson?" Hinata quickly shook her head and whispered, "No, that person is my Nisan brother. He's very powerful." Naruto gave her a reassuring look and replied, "Don't worry, no matter how powerful he is, he's not as powerful as me. If he bullies you, I'll beat him up in a minute." Then Naruto's gaze turned to other places and saw a guy with short red hair, panda eyes, and a huge yellow gourd on his back. "Sanin, human pillar force, my love." My love felt Naruto's gaze and stared at him indifferently. Naruto smiled and raised his hand to greet him. My love's eyebrowless face frowned, he snorted and turned his head. "Where is Orochimaru hiding?" Naruto's gaze continued to search. In this examination room, Orochimaru was the guy standing at the top of the food chain. But at this time, one of the invigilators came over and said to Naruto and the others, "Why aren't you in line?" Naruto laughed and said, "We're waiting for everyone to take it before we go." The examiner raised his hand and there were 3 number plates in his hand. "Give me your application form, and then pick any number plate." The 3 number plates were 53,105, 23. Naruto handed over his application form and picked up 105. Naruto felt that this number should be at the back, so that it would be convenient for him to observe the candidates. Examiner, "Okay, you can take your number plate and sit down in the designated position." Naruto thanked him and then began to look for his number 105. The funny thing was that the number plates were arranged in a snake-shaped order, 105, in the first row. Awkward. 5 minutes later, under the initiative of many examiners and the queues, everyone got their number plates. The last number was 153, indicating that there were 153 people taking the exam this time. It was worth mentioning that Sakura Haruno was sitting next to Naruto. Naruto joked, "I'm not good at exams at all, I'll rely on you later." Sakura Haruno was stunned. Such a brazen person wanted to copy her paper. It was the first time she saw such a shameless person. Ahem. The examiner in front of Naruto cleared his throat, indicating his presence. Naruto turned his head and laughed. "It's okay, I just met an acquaintance and made a joke." The examiner raised his eyebrows and looked like he had eaten an S. At this moment, Ibiki on the podium picked up a piece of chalk and knocked on the blackboard, using his hoarse and unpleasant voice to shout, "There are a few important rules regarding this exam. I'll write them down on the blackboard and explain them. During this time, no one is allowed to ask questions. The first rule. There are a total of 10 questions, 1 point per question. The exam will implement a point deduction system. 1 point will be added if the answer is correct, 1 point will be deducted if the answer is incorrect. The second rule. This exam will be judged in groups of 3, based on the total score of the 3 members. The third rule. If you are caught cheating in the exam, 2 points will be deducted. Remember all of this. Those clumsy cheating methods are tantamount to digging your own grave. If you want to be a chunin, then act like a real ninja." Ibishi's gaze swept across all the candidates from right to left as he said in a low voice, "There's one last rule. For those who have all their points deducted or get 0 points, all the members of their teams will be disqualified." Okay. The exam time is 1 hour. Now, the exam begins. After receiving the paper, Naruto glanced through it. Analysis of the code, simulation of the enemy scene, and so on. After a glance, Naruto curled his lips and thought disdainfully, "It's pretty simple." Naruto began to answer the questions with his pen nimbly twirling around his fingers. 5 minutes later, he finished. Putting down his pen, Naruto stared blankly at the ceiling. So boring. At this time, Sakura Haruno was still answering the third question. Sakura Haruno secretly glanced at Naruto, and when she saw that Naruto's paper was already full, she felt as if there was a bear roaring in her heart. He's answering blindly. Huh? Doesn't he need to think? Huh? Naruto stared blankly for a while, then suddenly raised his hand. Ibiki looked at Naruto and said coldly, "What's the matter?" Naruto smiled and asked, "That. I finished the first 9 questions. The 10th question is written on the exam paper to be given by the examiner, so can you just tell me the 10th question directly? I want to hand in my paper early." Ibiki's face darkened, and she said sternly, "No." After another 5 minutes, Naruto raised his hand again. Ibiki's mouth twitched, and she said in a low voice, "What's the matter now?" Naruto smiled and asked, "I finished the first 9 questions. Since I have nothing to do, can I hand in the first 9 questions first, and then invigilate the exam for you?" An examinee suddenly jumped out to invigilate the exam? What was he trying to do? Not only was Ibiki dumbfounded, but even the other examinees were dumbfounded. They couldn't help but think, is there something wrong with this kid's brain? Ibiki looked at Naruto with a scarred face. Reason. Naruto smiled and said, "First of all, it's boring sitting here, and second, if I find out that someone cheated 5 times, that would be a deduction of 10 points, and I could directly kick them out, then there would be fewer competitors, right?" Chapter 68. Ibiki smiled. Her scarred face looked particularly ferocious under this smile. Her voice was low and cold. "You mean you will be more professional than us?" Naruto also smiled and said, "Not at all, more people means more power." Ibiki walked in front of Naruto. Her sharp eyes were like an eagle looking down at Naruto indifferently. Naruto calmly looked back at her. During this time, all the candidates stopped writing and looked over. There wasn't even the sound of writing in the exam room. It was very quiet for a moment. Sakura Haruno, who was the closest, looked at Naruto and the invigilator timidly. In her eyes, Naruto was like a bold little white rabbit looking at an eagle. He was really looking for trouble. She was a little worried for Naruto, but more than that, she hoped that the invigilator would be angry and kick Naruto out of the exam room. That way, she would win against Naruto this time. When she passed the Chunin exam and was promoted to Chunin, she would see Naruto, who was only a genin. That kind of scene. She was looking forward to it. Sakura Haruno unconsciously crossed her arms in front of her chest. Not because she was worried, but because she was praying. Ninja God who protects the wood leaf, if you hear my prayer, kick this arrogant guy out of the exam room. While Sakura Haruno was praying, candidate number 53 Hinata, who was far behind Naruto, was also praying. The content of her prayer was naturally for Naruto. Naruto-kun, please don't let anything happen to him. Not far away, but in the other direction, candidate number 23, Sasuke, frowned. What was Naruto doing now? Was he deliberately looking for trouble? Did he want the invigilator to disqualify him? Or was it really like what he said, that he would catch the cheaters and then take the opportunity to clear out the competitors? Naruto and Ibiki stared at each other for a long time before Ibiki finally moved. She raised her hand and picked up Naruto's test paper before turning her gaze to the test paper. He scanned through Naruto's paper as fast as he could. At this moment, the coldness on his face gradually melted like snow and was replaced by a smile. However, when this sinister face smiled, it couldn't be considered good-looking. It only made one's scalp tingle. All 9 questions were answered correctly, and they were all very close to the standard answers. Ibiki placed the paper back on Naruto's table and laughed in a low and hoarse voice. Interesting brat, I agree with your proposal. Naruto's eyes sparkled. He grinned, revealing his snow-white teeth, and praised, this will be a wise decision. Then, Naruto turned around and smiled at all the candidates. At the same time, he proudly raised his eyebrows at Sakura Haruno, who was already dumbstruck. The wind blew, blowing Sakura Haruno's pink hair. It fluttered, and at the same time, it rolled up a withered leaf. The wind was rustling, messy. The candidates didn't dare to whisper to each other, but at this moment, everyone looked at Naruto. Some people glared at him threateningly. Naruto saw a few ninjas with 4 vertical lines on their forehead protectors. Those were the Amige-Cure's forehead protectors, but he couldn't name them. Their expressions were very fierce. Naruto just casually glanced at that person. In his heart, he evaluated that person as a chihuahua. There was also someone who boldly threw a flirtatious glance at Naruto. It was a female ninja. Her appearance was not bad, and she wore a one-piece dress. Through the gap between the table and the chair, Naruto could see that it was a very sexy miniskirt that only wrapped around her hips. However, he also didn't recognize her. In his heart, he evaluated that she was a female chihuahua. Ibiki said in a deep voice, "Pay attention to the time." The candidates who cast various kinds of glances at Naruto finally lowered their heads and began to answer the test again. Naruto looked at the red-haired my love that he had already noticed in the crowd. He didn't answer the test. Instead, he sat quietly with his hands crossed in front of his chest. Naruto guessed that this guy should be waiting for others to answer more or less so that he could cheat. TSK, TSK, TSK. This time, I won't let you get what you want. Sandai, right? I will pay more attention to you. Naruto changed Chakra's nature to the water attribute. A drop of water appeared in Naruto's palm. Rolling, it floated in the air. Naruto clenched his fist and wrapped it. The water droplet in Naruto's hand constantly disintegrated into mist and spread in the surrounding air. Ibiki sensed something and looked at Naruto. However, she didn't stop him. Naruto smiled as he continued to size up the candidates below. He found his brother-in-law, Hinata Ningji. If his brother-in-law was caught by him and couldn't even pass the first test, he was looking forward to it. Tut, tut, 2 kunais suddenly flew out from the invigilator's hand and nailed onto the papers of 2 candidates. Number 102. Number 45. You have already cheated 5 times. Please leave the examination hall. The invigilator, whose hair stood on end, roared. One of the 2 candidates was scared out of his wits. His whole body was trembling. The other was also scared out of his wits but still wanted to resist. He shouted at the invigilator, "What right do you have to say that I cheated 5 times? Show me the evidence." The invigilator disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he had already captured the candidate. He used one hand to press the candidate's head onto the table. "My ability is the best proof. You are out." Domineering. Cool. Naruto wanted to shout, "You are all out." But if he did, Orochimaru-sama would beat him very badly. Naruto glanced at a bamboo hat on the table. There was a note hanging on the hat with the words, "Evil Man," written on it. The man was wearing a forehead protector with a broken line on his head. It was the forehead protector of Kusagakure. Kusagakure was just a small ninja village. It wasn't worth Naruto's attention. What Naruto paid attention to was that this person's tongue was thin and long, just like the black and white impermanence. He had a head full of black hair and a smile in his eyes. The muscles on his face were frozen and he was wearing a fake smile. This person was pretending to be a ninja from Kusagakure, Orochimaru. Naruto just glanced at him in a hurry. He didn't dare to stare at Orochimaru. He commented in his heart, "Orochimaru-san is also answering questions seriously. This scene is really loving. Orochimaru certainly didn't need to cheat." Naruto turned his gaze to the other 2 people who were also wearing bamboo hats. One wrote, "Crime, crime," and the other wrote, "Punishment, punishment." These 2 people also wore the forehead protector of Kusagakure, and they teamed up with Orochimaru. Naruto already had a plan in his heart, and he was ready to start with these 2 people. According to the exam rules, as long as one person in the team gets 0 points, then the whole team is out. Naruto glanced at the 2 people. Huh. Sasuke opened his Sharingan. This means that Sasuke is copying other people's answers. Naruto suddenly had an impulse in his heart. He wanted to report Sasuke. It would be interesting. But after that, Kakashi will inevitably give him a week of electroshock therapy. Naruto shook his head and got rid of this idea. Chapter 69. Naruto resisted the impulse in his heart and shifted his gaze from Sasuke to the side, so he saw Shaoli, who was sweating profusely. Tsuke. Sure enough, those with brawn are simple-minded. Watermelon cap, thick black eyebrows nearly 2 fingers thick, coupled with rolling eyes and drooping eyelashes. Kawaii, and that green skin-tight suit. Naruto's facial muscles twitched, but quickly returned to normal. Can't laugh. Absolutely can't laugh. Endure it. Naruto had a hard time holding it in. He quickly shifted his gaze to look for someone who didn't have such a stimulating laughing point. He found it though. Orochimaru's undercover ambush in Woodleaf. In order to collect information, he took the Chunin exam 4 times in a row and didn't pass. He had silver-gray hair tied in a playful short ponytail and round glasses. From time to time, he would raise his hand to straighten the frame that didn't slip at all. This is a guy full of bad ideas. Seeing this person, Naruto's originally uncontrollable laughter quickly controlled. He observed for a while. Hiss. Answering the questions very smoothly. Also, he has taken the exam 4 times. If he still can't answer smoothly, then he should just commit suicide. Can this person be kicked out? Naruto looked for this person's 2 teammates in the crowd. Unfortunately, Naruto forgot what this guy's other 2 teammates looked like. This is Woodleaf's home ground. There were piles of genin wearing Woodleaf forehead protectors, occupying more than half of the entire examination room. Naruto was also face-blind for a while. This is difficult. Shikamaru? He also had a ponytail and black hair, but his hair was thicker. His hair stood up like a hedgehog even if it was tied with a leather band. Naruto knew this was a smart guy, but what surprised him was that this smart guy wasn't answering the questions. His face was lazy and unwilling. Simply put, his expression was like he ate an S grade. This guy. Could it be that he also had to cheat to pass the test? Naruto looked at this guy's teammate, Ino. Her long beige hair was very soft. Her bangs were separated from her hair and hung down from the right side of her face. When the wind blew, her hair fluttered with the wind. It was very gentle and elegant. She was a very delicate girl. Ino stole a glance at the front row. Naruto followed her gaze and saw Sakura Haruno. By this time, Sakura Haruno had finished her paper. However, he didn't look too happy, probably because Naruto finished in 5 minutes. Naruto looked at Ino again. Ino was about to make her move. Naruto saw her secretly forming hand seals. If he guessed correctly, she must have used a secret technique of the Yamanaka clan, the mind-body jutsu, to invade Sakura Haruno's body with her spiritual power. Naruto glanced at the surrounding invigilators. No one stopped Ino's little action. It was obvious that the use of ninjutsu was tacitly allowed. Ino formed hand seals with her hands and then lay on the table as if she had fallen asleep. Naruto shifted his gaze to Sakura Haruno. Sakura Haruno's body stiffened. Then, an abnormal smile appeared on her face. She was very proud. At the same time, Shikamaru and Dingji, who was as fat as a ball, suddenly became energetic. They began to answer the questions properly. They didn't answer the questions before, but now they answered. It was obvious that Ino had used a secret technique to pass the answers to the two of them. At this time, someone raised his hand. Naruto looked over. It was the ninja of the Sand Country, Kankuro. "Sorry. I need to go to the bathroom." Then, an invigilator stood up and said, "Only invigilators can go." As he spoke, he picked up a handcuff and grilled Kankuro's hands. Then, he took Kankuro out. Immediately after, Naruto felt the sand in the air begin to move consciously. My love formed hand seals with one hand. Silently, the sand gathered together. Naruto couldn't see these changes, but he could feel it from the dispersed water vapor in the air. Should he report my love? That was the last resort. Naruto wasn't afraid of my love, nor was he afraid of the Ichibi in his body. If he wanted to borrow the power of a tailed beast, Nine Tails was much stronger than him. But he didn't want to cause trouble for himself. After 5 minutes, Kankuro was brought back. Naruto said, "The ninja of Sannin who went to the bathroom, you can stand at the door and go home. You are out." This sentence attracted everyone's attention. It had been more than half an hour since the exam began. Naruto didn't speak. After such a long time, these people forgot that there was such a special invigilator. Kankuro angrily shouted, "Why?" At this time, the invigilators also looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at the invigilator who was about to untie Kankuro's hands and said, "That person is not an invigilator, but your puppet. You used a puppet to pretend to be an invigilator, let him collect the answers, and then when you went to the bathroom, let the puppet tell you the answers, am I right?" Kankuro was dumbfounded. The red paint on his face kept shaking as his facial muscles trembled. Naruto looked at Ibiki. Ibiki was also looking at him. Ibiki smiled and nodded, indifferently said, "Since this trick can be discovered by a wood-leaf genin, then, you are out." Bastard! This was my love's roar. The quicksand quickly gathered and wrapped around Kankuro. Sand coffin. Kankuro was shocked. The puppet disguised as an invigilator and Kankuro switched positions. The sand bound the puppet, and as it tightened, creaking sounds could be heard. Then, with a crash, Kankuro's puppet was crushed by the sand. "Stop. Private fights are forbidden in the exam room," Ibiki shouted, and at the same time, all the invigilators stood up. At this time, a Sannin woman stopped my love, Sama. "Stop." It was a sexy beauty. This person was my love sister. Hand bow. Her height was above the rest of the candidates, and her figure was curvy. She was a mature beauty. My love stared at Kankuro, and when he heard Hanbao shout, he turned to look at Hanbao. Hanbao was my love's sister, Kankuro was my love's brother. But it could be seen that Kankuro's brother, my love, listened to his sister. At least he stopped. The anger on my love's face gradually disappeared, and was replaced by indifference. Then he snorted and left the exam room. But before he left, he turned around and glared at Naruto. I will remember you. Naruto shrugged. He already tried his best to avoid angering my love. But it seemed like it didn't have any effect. My love left, and the sand scattered. Kankuro's puppet shattered into parts. Kankuro waved his hand, and Chakra controlled the puppet to reassemble it. Then he quickly wrapped it in a white cloth and carried it on his back. He followed my love out of the exam room with a lingering fear. Ibiki turned to Naruto and said, "Your performance was not bad, you surprised me. Now you can return to your seat. I will announce the 10th question." Naruto stood in place and smiled. "I caught a lot of people, let me drag them out, then I will go back." Naruto pointed to the person who was copying the answer with supercilious eyes and said, "Stop copying, you know that the answer is right or wrong, just copy." With Byakugan's 360-degree vision, Neji could see that Naruto was talking to him even if he lowered his head. He couldn't help but raise his head and look at Naruto. Naruto smiled. "You copied 5 questions, right? 5 cheats, get up, you are out." "Brother-in-law, I am sorry." Naruto was laughing wildly in his heart. Chapter 70. Hinata Ninji, eliminated. Tion, who was sitting in the exam room with 2 cute little buns on her head, stared at him with her beautiful eyes. The pen in the corner of the table rolled and finally fell to the ground. With Tion's skill, she could have grabbed the pen back, but she didn't do so. She stared blankly at Hinata Ninji, who stood up and walked out, and her heart sank to the bottom. Naruto. Tion turned her head and looked at Naruto. If the anger in her eyes could kill, then Naruto had no doubt that he would become a roasted chicken. Naruto kept smiling, but in his heart he comforted her. "Oh, this exam is very dangerous. Letting you quit early is for your own good." Tion got up, stared at Naruto and said, "I will remember you." Then she left the exam room. First, he was remembered by my love, then by Tion. Naruto was a little scared in his heart. Should he continue? Let Orochimaru also remember? Naruto didn't dare to look in the direction of Orochimaru, but Orochimaru had already commented, "Is his name Naruto? What an interesting little guy." Naruto heard this sentence, and his face darkened. He really wanted to beat Tion up. Tion's shout before leaving made everyone remember him. Since he had already remembered, then what was there to be afraid of? Naruto turned his head and looked at the person with the punishment note hanging on his bamboo hat, and shouted, "And you? You cheated 5 times, get out." The person named by Naruto immediately retorted, "Show me the evidence." Naruto didn't hold back and mocked. "I said that out of the 9 questions, except for the first one, the last 8 were copied from others. If you refute me, I'll change the original question by a number. If you can answer it, it proves that you didn't cheat. Do you dare?" The ninja with Kusagakure ninja didn't speak and stared at Naruto fiercely. Ibiki said, "Get out." Orochimaru disguised as a ninja got up and applauded. "You are a very interesting little guy, very good." Praised by Orochimaru, Naruto suddenly felt a little thirsty. Orochimaru walked to the door and suddenly turned back and said, "I will remember you." Hee, another, "I will remember you." It can be imagined that after Chunin's exam, Naruto's name will spread throughout most of the ninja world. For some reason, thinking of this, Naruto was a little excited. He looked at Ino. At this time, Ino had finished her mind-body jutsu and looked at Naruto with an open face. She seemed to be saying that even if you catch everyone, you will not find out that I cheated. Naruto looked at her for a few seconds. "Ino." Although their team has a smart but lazy Shikamaru, and a fat Dingji who only knows how to eat. Or, let her go for the sake of their classmates' friendship? Naruto was about to shift his gaze, but at this time, Ino gave Naruto a provocative look. Hiss. Naruto took a breath of cold air. He thought to himself, I have a bad temper. Naruto stared back. You cheated and copied Sakura Haruno's test paper. You copied the 10 questions from the beginning to the end, and you almost copied your name. Yamanaka Ino's eyes that were still staring solidified, which made the originally arrogant and delicate beautiful eyes become dull in an instant. Naruto continued, at the same time, not only did you cheat, you also passed the answers to your 2 companions. The 3 of you gave the same answers. Do you have any objections? Ino opened her mouth. Ino didn't say anything. Shikamaru had already stood up. He crossed his fingers behind his head and said indifferently, well, since I was caught, that's good. I don't want to take any Chunin's exam anyway. Then, before the head examiner could say anything, he left. Shikamaru didn't say anything before leaving. I'll remember your words. This made Naruto feel a little disappointed. But then, Ino Yamanaka made up for it. Before walking out of the examination room, she snorted, I'll remember you. Naruto smiled and turned to Sakura Haruno with a smile. Sakura Haruno saw Naruto looking at her and raised her neck proudly. She looked like she was saying, I answered myself, what can you do about it? Naruto smiled and looked at Sakura Haruno's teammate, Shino Yomi. Sakura Haruno saw Naruto look away from her and was happy. But then, she saw Naruto look at Shino Yomi. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Naruto opened his mouth. You cheated with bugs. You cheated 7 times. Shino Yomi and Shikamaru Nara did the same. Without waiting for the head examiner to speak, they raised their hands to adjust their round black sunglasses and got up to leave. Sakura Haruno's heart went crazy. Naruto. Just you wait. Sakura Haruno left. Another teammate, Tooth Inuzuka, got up and left helplessly. The puppy lying on Tooth Inuzuka's head roared at Naruto before it left. I wonder if that means I'll remember you. Should I make a dog meat hot pot some other day? Naruto looked at the puppy that roared at him and thought. At this point, all the elite ninjas in the Chunin exam were eliminated. The rest. Naruto thought about it and decided to let them stay. Otherwise, if they were all eliminated, what was the point of the exam? Naruto clapped his hands and returned to his seat. He smiled and said, that's it, there's nothing else. Ibi's eyes swept around with joy. With Ibiki's eyesight, how could she not know what kind of people were left? She was speechless. Was there a need to continue the Chunin exam? Ibiki looked at Naruto with a hint of bitterness in her eyes. I'll now announce the 10th question. Ibiki was silent for a while before she finally opened her mouth. For the 10th question, I'd like to add a few rules. These are despairing rules. But fortunately, you can choose whether to take the exam or not. Ibiki's gaze swept across the room. The atmosphere in the examination room became solemn again under this gaze. If you choose not to take the exam, your score will be 0. At the same time, the other 2 in your group will also be disqualified. If you choose to take the exam, and fail, then you won't be qualified to take the Chunin exam again in this lifetime. At this time, someone raised his hand and asked, that's not right. How can there be such a question? Many of us have taken the Chunin exam more than once. Ibiki smiled. The hideous scars on her face twisted together. Naruto glanced at her and commented in his heart that this was a shocking smile. Ibiki said, if you want to blame someone, blame the person who organized the exam. It's me. The person who stood up wanted to argue, but when he saw Ibiki's fierce look, he swallowed his words and obediently sat back down. Ibiki. All right. I've said what I wanted to say. Those who don't want to take the exam, raise your hand and signal your number. You can leave after that. As soon as she finished speaking, Someone raised his hand and said, I don't want to take the exam. With one person taking the lead, more people followed behind. One after another, in a minute, more than half of the 100 people in the room left. Naruto casually crossed his legs and rested his chin on his hand as he watched people leave one by one. When no one left, Ibiki looked at Naruto. Kid, you're not bad. If you don't pass this time, you won't be able to advance to Chunin in the future. You're not giving up? Sometimes, giving up is the right choice. Naruto raised his head and casually replied, You're asking me? It's okay, I don't care. I just learned 2 new skills not long ago. Even if I can't advance to Chunin, I can still be a swordsmith. Even if I can't be a swordsmith, I can still be a medical ninja. As he said that, he waved his hand casually as if he didn't care about Chunin's rank. Ibiki's mouth twitched when she heard that. At this time, according to the original plan, she should announce that those who insisted on staying passed the exam. However, when Ibiki saw Naruto's nonchalant expression, she suddenly wanted to change her words. Should she change the 10th question and give him a question that he definitely won't be able to answer? For some reason, Ibiki really wanted to see Naruto holding a hammer every day for the rest of his life. P.S. Would leave strength above all QQ group 627576058. Chapter 71. Do you want to add a 10th question? Ibiki looked at Naruto, and the more she looked at him, the stronger the impulse in her heart became. But, Ibiki looked up at the remaining candidates in the room. There were originally 153 people, but now there are only 36 people left, which means there are only 12 groups left. If the kid didn't remove those elites, there would be at least 51 people left, 17 groups. In this case, if there is another question, then this year's Chunin exam will be a big mistake. After all, this is only the first exam. Now, I announce that everyone present has passed this exam. Ibiki was helpless, and she stared at Naruto. Naruto turned his head to the back, deliberately avoiding her eyes. Ibi gritted his teeth in joy and hatred. Well, everyone present must have doubts in their hearts. Next, I will explain the exam. The first 9 questions test everyone's ability to collect and analyze information. Under normal circumstances, with your current level, most people can't answer these questions correctly. So we arranged 2 Chunin in the middle of the examination room who know the answers to the questions with you. What you have to do is to find them, and then use your means to get the correct answer. At this time, an Amige Cure ninja asked, So, cheating is allowed? Ibishi looked over and nodded his head. Cheating is indeed allowed. However, for those who cheat clumsily, Ibiki raised her hand and untied the black headscarf connected to the ninja's forehead. His head was full of burns, knife wounds, and even holes. For a time, the entire examination room was silent under such a fierce visual impact. They can only be disqualified. Because information is sometimes more important than life, so when performing a mission or on the battlefield, sometimes you have to get information even if you have to risk your life. Ibiki put on the headscarf again. After obtaining information, if it is discovered or known by the third party, the information obtained is not necessarily reliable. You must remember, if the information is wrong, it will put your companions and even the village in extreme danger. So this exam is to test your ability to collect information and eliminate unqualified people. Saying this, Ibiki looked at Naruto. Ibiki was surprised that Naruto could catch so many people. This kid has some skills. Naruto saw Ibiki looking at him, so he diverted her attention. What about the 10th question? Ibiki's face twitched. This guy really doesn't know the purpose of the 10th question. Thinking of Naruto's words that if he can't be promoted to Chunin, Iki can't help but feel uncomfortable. To let such a fellow pass the exam under his watch. No matter how he thought about it, he was unwilling to accept it. But, even if he tried to stop him, if this guy in front of him is really talented in medical ninjutsu, then he will be promoted to a Chunin. Because in the medical ninja system, there is an independent promotion rule. Ibiki said, in fact, the 10th question is the real test. Facing the 10th question, you have to choose whether to take the exam or not. This is indeed difficult to choose. If you don't take the exam, you will cause your companions to lose the qualification. If you answer the exam wrong, you can only endure it for the rest of your life. This question is actually not reasonable. But if you really encounter such a situation, what will you choose? If you are already Chunin, and the mission is to seize the enemy's confidential documents, but you don't know the number, strength, and weapons of the enemy, and there is a possibility of being ambushed, what will you do at this time? Ibiki's eyes swept across everyone's face. Because you are afraid of losing your life, you don't want your companions to be in danger, so you give up the dangerous mission? Everyone began to ponder Ibiki's words. Ibiki said firmly, "You can't do that. Sometimes, some missions have to be accepted no matter how dangerous it is. At this time, you can give your companions courage and have the ability to get out of trouble. These are the qualifications that a Chunin must have as a squad commander." Ibiki's voice rapidly penetrated everyone's hearts, and she continued to reprimand them. People who are afraid of the slightest thing in the face of danger. People who pin their hopes on the unpredictable next year. And people who take the initiative to quit. In my opinion, they are all weak-willed trash. They don't deserve to be Chunin. The lingering sound of her voice woke everyone up. Ibiki's voice slowed down, and there was even a hint of gentleness, love, and expectation on her face. And you, who are going to take the 10th question, can be said to have given the correct answer to this question. I am sure that you will be able to overcome all the difficulties you will encounter in the future. Ibiki's face relaxed, and for a moment, the scar across the squad leader's face didn't seem so hideous. You have passed my test. The first test of the Chunin selection exam is over. Then, she revealed a smile that wasn't too ugly. You have to work hard in the future. The first test was finally over. Without those genius monsters like Orochimaru, my love, Hinata Ningji, and Lee Locke, Naruto only felt relaxed. For a moment, he couldn't help but yawn. He sighed in his heart, "My future is bright." At this moment, crash. The side window was suddenly smashed, and a black whirlwind shot in from the outside towards the podium. Tut, tut. The whirlwind opened up, and two kunai shot to the left and right of the roof, unfurling a large flag and hanging it on the roof. On the flag, there were the words, "Second Examiner, Mitarashi Red Bean, participate." In front of the flag, there was a sexy female examiner wearing a windbreaker, a see-through fishnet bodysuit, and a miniskirt. Her hair was tied up in a hedgehog ponytail. "It's too early to be happy. I'm the head examiner of the second test. Mitarashi Red Bean. Before she could finish, Red Bean was suddenly speechless. She glanced at the empty classroom, and then looked at Ibiki in disbelief. "I heard that 153 people applied for this test?" Ibiki Marino nodded awkwardly. Red Bean's facial muscles twitched as she pointed at the remaining 36 people. "Then can you tell me what you did?" Ibiki Marino actually scratched her head in embarrassment after being questioned. "This year's examinees are quite bad." Red Bean Marino was unwilling. "No matter how bad they are, you can't just leave me with 1/5, right? Do you know that I'll have to reschedule the rest of the test?" Reschedule the test? What did she mean? Was she going to change the test topic? Naruto Marino perked up and listened carefully. Ibiki continued to scratch her head, not knowing how to respond. Red Bean Mitarashi remained silent for a moment before saying, "I want to reselect the people you eliminated." Ibiki frowned. "Isn't that inappropriate?" Mitarashi Red Bean immediately left. "Then I'll report this matter to Sandaime-sama and let him decide." Naruto was dumbfounded. He had already offended all the elites. If those elites came back now, Naruto's heart suddenly skipped a beat. No. Chapter 72. At the end of the first exam, Sandaime's office became lively. Two examiners stood in the front row, Red Bean Matarai and Ibiki Marino. Behind him were the 4 team leaders, Kakashi Hatake, Metkei, Sarutobi Asuma, and Kurenai. Third Naruto placed his hands on the desk, crossed his fingers, and propped up his chin. I heard that after the first exam, only 36 of the 153 candidates were left? Ibiki, are the candidates this time that bad? The corner of Ibiki's mouth twitched as she said insincerely, yes. Before she could finish her sentence, Ibiki felt 3 pairs of eyes staring at her from behind. Ibiki awkwardly looked back and saw Mato Guy's face flushed red with anger, Sarutobi Asuma's face full of anger, and Kurenai Crimson's beautiful face. Naruto, that bastard. At this moment, what Ibiki wanted to do the most was to get Naruto into the interrogation room. Well, it's not too bad. Woodleaf's batch of freshmen has a lot to recommend them. Under the pressure from behind, Ibiki Marino didn't say the word bad in the end. The third Hokage nodded, explain the specific situation. Ibiki Marino sighed. This is all because of a wrong decision on my part. I'm willing to bear the punishment. Third Naruto raised his head and asked, what kind of decision could eliminate more than half of the elites in an exam? Tell me about it. Ibiki Marino explained, I have already given the exam questions to Naruto-sama before the exam. Naruto-sama should know that the first exam is mainly to test the candidate's temperament. Third Naruto nodded and praised, the questions you came up with are pretty good. Is there anything that didn't go well? Ibiki Marino continued, the first 5 minutes of the exam went quite smoothly until Naruto finished his paper. Naruto. Kakashi Hatake's heart jumped. He had originally planned to watch the show from the sidelines. After all, his Class 7 had passed the exam. But at this moment, when he heard Naruto's name, an ominous premonition arose. He couldn't help but think in his heart. Could it be that Naruto, that guy, is up to something again? That can't be. What could possibly happen in a written exam? Answer the questions when you should, cheat when you should, cheat when you should. How can you affect others when you play with your own game? Kakashi couldn't understand. He perked up his ears and waited for Ibiki to continue. Ibiki Marino said, after Naruto finished answering the question, he asked if I could tell him the 10th question. He wanted to hand in his paper in advance. This request was directly rejected. Then 5 minutes later, Naruto asked if I could hand in the first 9 questions first, and then help me invigilate the exam. I agreed. I thought that a cheating method could be easily discovered by a genin, and kicked out. But I didn't expect that Naruto directly kicked out the 5 teams that were ranked in the front. Naruto Hatake's interest was piqued. He put down his hand and looked up and asked, which 5 teams? Ibiki Marino replied, Woodleaf's 3 teams this year, plus Sanin's team, My Love's team, and Kusagaku's team. Brush, brush, brush. Metkei, Asuma, and Kurenai looked at Kakashi at the same time. Kakashi took a step back and said with a smile, this has nothing to do with me. Metkei Hatake suddenly hugged Kakashi's shoulder with a fierce flame in his eyes. It seems that not only you are my lifelong opponent, but the fate of your students and my students has been entangled together. Youth. You are so passionate. Kakashi, who was originally a little flustered, suddenly had a dead fish's eyes. He found that no matter what he encountered in front of this joker, the atmosphere would change instantly. Naruto Hatake's fingers tapped on the table. He praised, Naruto, this little guy really surprised me this time. Red Bean asked, Sandame Naruto-sama, I propose to rescreen the students who were eliminated in the first round. Otherwise, there will only be 6 teams left after my round, and those 6 teams are not good enough. Naruto Hatake pondered, I refuse to rescreen. A loud shout came from outside Naruto Hatake's office. Everyone looked over and saw Naruto hanging upside down outside Naruto Hatake's office window. Kakashi Hatake's eyelids twitched when he saw Naruto Hatake. This guy actually dared to eavesdrop on Naruto Hatake's meeting. Was there anything he didn't dare to do? Kakashi instantly appeared behind Naruto Hatake and captured Naruto. At the same time, he electrocuted Hatake, but the next moment, Naruto in his hand disappeared with a bang. Only a cloud of mist was left. It was a clone. Kakashi Hataki's mouth twitched. At this moment, another Naruto Hatake appeared and shouted, "I firmly oppose this proposal. Your resistance is ineffective." Red Bean made her move. 5 or 6 snake heads darted out from her sleeves and coiled around Naruto. Latent shadow snakeskin. Unfortunately, this one was also a clone. Then, as if it was raining, a pile of Naruto fell from the roof of the Naruto building. At the same time, he shouted, "We firmly reject the proposal of rescreening." Kakashi raised his hand and patted his forehead. At the same time, he retreated back into the house and decided to let Red Bean work on her own. Naruto laughed and waved his hand. "Red Bean, take a break. Naruto, stop messing around. Come in and tell me why you don't agree." Red Bean Mitarashi angrily crushed Naruto in her hand before she snorted and returned to Naruto's office. Naruto followed him into the office. Seeing that Red Bean was about to attack again, Seiji hurriedly hid behind Naruto's back. Naruto knocked on the table. "Alright, everyone stop." Then, he turned around to look at Naruto. "Tell me, why did you refuse?" Naruto complained. "Is there even a need to say it? If the rescreening happens, those 5 teams will definitely come back. They'll definitely take revenge on me. Then I'll definitely have a hard time in the future exams. I won't do it. Besides, I'm not in the wrong. You can't use your own mistakes to punish me, right? That's too much of a bully," Red Bean Mitarashi insisted. "The Chunin exam is incredibly important to the village, especially the last round. Famous people from all over the world will be invited to watch. This will affect the future missions the village will receive." Naruto raised his hand and stopped Red Bean Mitarashi from continuing. "You can leave for now. Let me talk to this little guy alone." Sarutobi Asuma and Kurenai bowed and left. Ibiki was right behind them. Red Bean Mitarashi glared at Naruto because she didn't manage to catch Naruto. Kakashi Hataki's hand crackled with electricity. He didn't need to say anything to warn Seiji. On the other hand, Metke gave Seiji a thumbs up and grinned, revealing a row of neat teeth. He laughed heartily and praised Seiji. Naruto was moved by this. He sighed in his mind. Some teachers are called other people's teachers. Chapter 73. When everyone left, Sandaime Naruto said to Naruto, "Conducting a second round of screening for the eliminated people is the most appropriate thing to do in this situation." Naruto looked at Sandaime Naruto pitifully. "Sandaime Naruto, Sama, if you do this, then I'm doomed. If I accidentally die in the competition because of your decision, how will you face Sandaime Naruto in the future?" "Meet Sandaime Naruto? Bah. Sandaime Naruto is already dead. Didn't Sandaime Naruto say that he's dead when he sees him?" Sandaime Naruto's face darkened, and his beard curled up in anger. Naruto continued to plead bitterly, "You can't just push me into the fire pit knowing full well that it's a fire pit, right?" Sandaime Naruto's mouth twitched, and he resisted the urge to swear and flip the table, and shook his head firmly. Naruto said with a look of despair, "Is there really no room for negotiation?" Sandaime Naruto comforted him, "The people you offended may not be able to return to the competition." Naruto rolled his eyes. The people he offended, Orochimaru. How could Orochimaru be eliminated by others in the preliminary round? My love, that was the human pillar force of the Ichibi who was always on the verge of rage. Hinata Ningji, the genius of the Hyuga clan who didn't appear in 100 years, who taught himself the secret technique of the Hyuga clan at a young age, how could he not be able to deal with a preliminary round? The beautiful wood-leaf blue beast Xiao Li, that guy was willing to bet his life in order to win the competition, and directly opened 5 gates of the Hashiman Tonku. Naruto had learned the Hashiman Tonku, and opening 1 gate was already tiring enough. Opening 5 gates? Only one word could describe him as a pervert. Ino Yamanaka, who hated Naruto to the bone, and the Ino Shika butterfly team had always been Wood Leaf's strongest team. None of the 5 teams were easy to deal with. However, Naruto had thoroughly offended all 5 of them. Naruto felt that he should just pack up and pass away. He rolled his eyes and said to Naruto, "Do you even believe your own words?" Sandaime Naruto remained silent. Naruto asked again, "Lord Third Naruto, have you made your decision?" Naruto sighed. "I've made a decision." Naruto nodded and said, "Alright, how about this, if you give me the other ice escape secret technique, I'll reluctantly agree." Naruto asked curiously, "You want another scroll of ice escape? I thought you were going to withdraw from the competition. So you've learned the ice escape secret technique I gave you before?" Naruto thought that if it weren't for Kakashi, that Tion freak, who could electrocute people for no reason, he would definitely have asked to withdraw from the competition. "I've learned it, so give me the other scroll." When Chunin's exam was over, Sandaime Naruto would pass away. At that time, he wouldn't be able to find Sandaime Naruto anymore. Thus, Naruto had been thinking about how to get the other scroll of ice escape secret technique before Chunin's exam ended. However, Sandaime Naruto shook his head. "Even if I give it to you now, you won't be able to learn it immediately. I'll give it to you after you pass Chunin's exam." Naruto looked at Sandaime Naruto. Sandaime Naruto smiled kindly at him. Sandaime Naruto wanted him to prove himself? No way. He had offended 5 powerful teams in a row, and he still wanted to pass the exam? This exam was really difficult to reach new heights. Naruto said helplessly, "Give me a 50% discount. Give it to me after I pass the second exam. I've offended 5 extremely powerful teams in a row. Passing the second exam is already far beyond what an ordinary person can do." Of course, the most important thing was that Chunin's exam couldn't go all the way to the end. Naruto looked at Sandaime Naruto. Sandaime Naruto looked at Naruto and smiled. "If you can pass the second exam, then you can definitely pass the third exam. Okay, I promise you. When you pass the second exam, I'll give you the second scroll." Naruto finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that Sandaime Naruto wouldn't let go of this condition. If that's the case, he probably won't be able to see the second scroll. Naruto seriously bowed 90 degrees to Naruto. After the ceremony, Naruto left Naruto's office. After Naruto left, a man with gauze over his right eye and his right arm hidden in his clothes came in from the side door. It was a separate room in the ninja's office. "Hiruzen, are you really going to give him that technique?" Naruto looked at him and said, "Since he has the Ice Release Kekki Genkai, let him use it. In this way, other people who don't know the truth won't believe that he's a descendant of Sandaime Naruto. It's good for him and the village." The man with gauze over his right eye nodded. "Well, no one will believe that a kid can fuse with his Kekki Genkai, so no one will believe that he's that person's child. This is indeed a good idea. Hiruzen, it seems that you have learned these things that you said you couldn't learn in the past." Naruto sighed and shook his head. "It's all for the sake of the village. However, Danzo, I'm different from you." The man called Danzo smiled. "You and I are indeed different, but this matter can't be hidden. Your disciple knows Naruto's identity, and Kakashi Hatake also knows a lot." Naruto shook his head. "They know what's important. They won't talk nonsense." Naruto left Naruto's office. When he went downstairs, he saw Kakashi Hatake leaning against the wall reading a book. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he still raised his hand to greet him. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei, are you waiting for me?" Kakashi raised his dead fish eyes and looked at Naruto listlessly. "Why do you always have to stir up trouble? Can't you just quietly pass the first round of the exam? Quietly be a pretty boy." Naruto blinked and pondered for a moment. "It seemed to be a good choice." He replied, "Well, I will quietly pass the second round of the exam." Kakashi looked at Naruto numbly and mocked. "I'm afraid you won't be able to keep a low profile in the next exam." Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "Yeah. Sigh, it's hard to be a good person. The tree wants to be quiet, but the wind won't stop. Seeing Naruto suddenly walk like an old man, Kakashi suddenly had the urge to kick Naruto to the sky. But in the end, he endured it. He was still very happy that Naruto didn't choose to withdraw from the competition because of difficulties. Why did he wait here? If Naruto really wanted to give up, he could kick Naruto back in time. Kakashi, okay, I still have something to do, so I'll go first. Remember to go to room 301 tomorrow to learn about the arrangements for the next exam. Kakashi left. Naruto jumped onto the roof. Naruto preferred to walk alone on the roof rather than suffer the disdain of passers-by on the road. But, where to go? Naruto felt for the key in his pocket. Because of Chunin's exam, Naruto hasn't gone to Uncle's house since the last time he left. But today Naruto wanted to go there. As for why, Naruto was afraid that he would be killed by Orochimaru in the middle of the night. Multiple shadow doppelganger technique created more than 100 doppelgangers, which then left in different directions. This way, it's safe. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.